when I looked at the invoice trembling in my hands and said, "Son, I cannot agree with this wedding of yours." My son went pale, his eyes darting to the floor. But the woman standing next to him, a woman I had never met before that moment, just smirked. She smoothed her expensive dress, looked me dead in the eye and said, "You are a little late for permissions, old man. The ceremony was 1 week ago." I stood there frozen in my own living room thinking that was the worst of it. I was wrong. 2 weeks later, they came back broke and desperate, begging me for help. And that was the moment I looked at them and said, "Get off my property." Before I tell you how I destroyed their world, you need to understand the man I was before they broke me. My name is Reginald King, but everyone in this neighborhood has called me Reggie for 40 years. I am 68 years old, a black man who built his life with calloused hands and a sore back. For 30 years, I was a general contractor. I poured the concrete foundations for half the commercial buildings in this county. I laid the bricks, I framed the walls, and I saved every single dime. To the outside world, and specifically to my son Isaiah, I am just a retired construction worker living in a paid-off, slightly outdated 3-bedroom house in a quiet suburb. I drive a 10-year-old truck. I wear flannel shirts and work boots because they are comfortable. I clip coupons for the grocery store. I live this way because it honors my late wife, Althea. She taught me that quiet wealth is the only wealth that lasts. What my son Isaiah never bothered to ask, and what he certainly does not know, is that I did not just build those commercial buildings. I bought them. Through a holding company named R&A Investments, standing for Reggie and Althea, I own strip malls, apartment complexes, and office spaces across the state. But I never told Isaiah. I wanted him to build his own character. I wanted him to be a man who valued sweat equity. Clearly, I failed. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the first crack in my reality appeared. I had walked down the driveway to check the mail, enjoying the cool autumn breeze. The mailbox was full of the usual junk flyers for Medicare supplements and lawn services, but stuck in the middle was a thick, cream-colored envelope. It was heavy, the kind of paper that costs more than a decent meal. It was addressed to Mr. Isaiah King. The mailman must have made a mistake. Isaiah had moved out 5 years ago, bouncing from one luxury apartment to another, trying to live a lifestyle his mid-level marketing job could not support. I usually just piled his misdirected mail on the hallway table, but this envelope was already open. The flap had come unglued in the heat or humidity. I pulled out the paper inside. It was an invoice. The letterhead was embossed in gold leaf. The Gilded Rose Hotel and Resort. I put on my reading glasses, thinking it was perhaps a bill for a weekend getaway. My eyes scanned down to the total balance due. $25,000. My breath hitched in my throat. This was the remaining 50% deposit for a wedding reception platinum package. The date of the event was listed as 7 days ago. I stared at the paper. My hands started to shake, not from age, but from a sudden violent cocktail of confusion and hurt. A wedding. My only son, the boy I had raised after Althea, passed the boy whose tuition I had paid, whose first car I had bought, had gotten married. And he had not only failed to invite me, he had failed to tell me he was even engaged. I walked back into the house, the silence of the empty room suddenly feeling very loud. I sat in my armchair, the leather worn soft over the years, and dialed Isaiah's number. It went to voicemail. I called again. No answer. I sent a text. "Come to the house. Now. We need to discuss the invoice from the Gilded Rose." An hour later, I heard the sound of a car engine in the driveway. It wasn't the sound of a normal car. It was the aggressive purr of a high-end sports car. I looked out the window and saw a brand-new silver convertible pulling up. Isaiah was driving, but he wasn't alone. In the passenger seat sat a young white woman. She was beautiful in a sharp, icy sort of way. She wore sunglasses that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, and she was inspecting my front lawn with a look of mild disgust. I opened the front door before they could knock. Isaiah stepped out wearing a suit that looked tailored. He looked nervous, sweating despite the cool air. The woman took her time. She stepped out of the car, smoothed her skirt, and walked toward me without a smile. Dad Isaiah started, his voice cracking slightly. "I can explain." I held up the invoice. "Explain this, Isaiah." $25,000 for a wedding. Before Isaiah could answer, the woman stepped forward. She extended a hand, her nails manicured to perfection. "You must be Reggie. I'm Victoria." She didn't say Mr. King. She didn't say Dad. She called me Reggie like I was the help. I didn't shake her hand. I looked at Isaiah. Who is this son? This is my wife, Dad, Isaiah said, looking at his shoes. Victoria. The word wife hung in the air like smoke from a burning building. I looked at Victoria. She had a smirk playing on her lips as if she found my shock amusing. You got married? I said, my voice low, without telling me, without inviting me. Isaiah finally looked up. It happened fast, Dad. We didn't want to make a big deal out of it. Not a big deal, I snapped, shaking the invoice. $50,000 total for a party is a big deal, Isaiah. And you didn't think your father deserved to be there? Your mother would be rolling in her grave. Don't bring her into this, Victoria cut in. Her voice was sharp, dismissive. And honestly, Reggie, stop being so dramatic. We wanted a specific aesthetic for our special day. We wanted it to be elegant, modern. She looked around my porch, her eyes lingering on the peeling paint of the rocking chair and the old wind chimes Althea had loved. We didn't think you would be comfortable, she continued. My family is very traditional. They aren't used to certain cultural differences. We thought it would be better for everyone if we kept the ceremony intimate. I felt the blood rush to my face. Cultural differences. It was a polite way of saying they didn't want a black man in a work shirt ruining their perfect white wedding photos. I looked at my son. He stood there silent, letting this woman insult his father, his history, and his blood. So you are ashamed of me, I said to Isaiah. It's not that, Dad, Isaiah pleaded, though his eyes told me it was exactly that. It was just Victoria's parents paid for the first half, and they are very particular people. We didn't want any conflict. Conflict, I laughed, a dry, bitter sound. You are worried about conflict. Son, you have just started a war. Victoria sighed, a loud, exaggerated sound of boredom. Look, what's done is done. We are married. I am a king now, whether you like it or not. She flashed a ring at me. It was massive, a diamond that caught the sunlight. I knew instantly that Isaiah could not afford that ring. I knew he must have put it on one of the emergency credit cards I had co-signed for years ago, the ones I thought he had paid off. Fine, I said, stepping back to close the door. You are married. Congratulations. Now you can leave. Wait, Isaiah said, stepping forward and putting his hand on the door frame. We actually need to talk to you about something else. I looked at him. The invoice wasn't enough. Victoria stepped up beside him. She pushed her sunglasses onto her head. She looked at me, not with respect, but with the entitlement of someone who has never been told no in her entire life. Our lease was up at our apartment, she said, and the landlord decided not to renew, something about renovations. We have been looking for a house to buy, but the market is terrible right now. So I asked. So Isaiah said, swallowing hard. We need a place to stay. Just for a little while. Maybe 6 months. Just until we find the perfect house. I stared at them. You get married behind my back, you insult me on my own porch, and now you want to move in. It makes sense, Victoria said, looking past me into the living room. This house is huge for one person. It's practically empty. You don't need all this space. We can take the master suite upstairs. It has the best light. I need space for my yoga and my content creation. You can move into the guest room downstairs. It's better for your knees anyway. She was already redecorating my life. She was already evicting me from the bedroom I had shared with Althea for 40 years. No, I said firmly. Absolutely not. Dad, please, Isaiah begged. We have nowhere else to go. All our money is tied up in the wedding costs. We have to be out of the apartment by tomorrow. If you don't help us, we are on the street. I looked at my son. I saw the desperation in his eyes. I saw the weakness. And I saw something else, fear. He was terrified of this woman. He was terrified of failing her. I thought about Althea. She would have never turned our son away, no matter how stupid he had been. She would have said, Reggie, he is still our boy. Guide him. I took a deep breath, a breath that tasted like ash. 6 months, I said. Not a day more. And you do not touch the master bedroom. That is your mother's room. You take the guest suite. Victoria wrinkled her nose. The guest suite. The one with the small bathroom. Take it or leave it, I said. Fine, she huffed. But we are going to have to make some changes. It smells like old people in here. She pushed past me, walking into my house like she owned the deed. Isaiah followed her, muttering a quick thanks, Dad, without looking me in the eye. I stood on the porch for a moment, watching the silver car in the driveway. I felt a cold knot in my stomach. I realized then that I had made a mistake. I had invited a wolf into my home because it was wearing my son's clothing. I walked inside. Victoria was already standing in the middle of the living room pointing at my old recliner. "That has to go," she told Isaiah. "It's hideous. And these curtains, Depression-era chic, is not my vibe." I walked past them straight to my study and closed the door. My hands were still shaking. I sat at my desk and pulled out a ledger. I needed to see exactly how much money I had been sending Isaiah. I needed to see the credit card statements. I picked up the phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in a long time. "Patrice," I said when the voice answered. "This is Reggie King. Yes, I know it's been a while. Listen, I need you to run a full audit on my personal transfers to Isaiah. And Patrice, get the paperwork ready for the trust. I think I'm going to need to make some changes." I hung up the phone. Outside my door, I could hear Victoria's voice echoing through the hallway. "We can paint this wall white," she was saying, "and maybe knock down that partition. Open up the space." I closed my eyes. They thought they were moving in with a helpless old retiree. They thought they could walk all over me. They didn't know that Reginald King doesn't just build foundations. He knows exactly how to demolish them too. The war for my home had just begun, and I was going to make sure they regretted every single inch they tried to take. But first, I had to let them think they had won. I had to let them get comfortable, because the higher they climbed, the harder they would fall. And I was going to enjoy watching the drop. The invasion began at 7 in the morning, not with a knock, but with the screech of wheels against my hardwood floors. I stood at the top of the stairs, watching a parade of luggage that seemed endless. 10 suitcases. Not small carry-on bags, but massive hard-shell cases that looked like they contained enough clothes for a royal expedition. Victoria stood in the foyer directing the movers she had hired with money I knew my son did not have. "Watch the paint," she snapped at a man carrying a vanity mirror. "That wall is already hideous enough without you scratching it." She did not see me, or perhaps she simply did not care. She walked through my home like a general surveying a conquered territory. Her heels clicked sharply against the wood, a sound that felt like nails being driven into my skull. By noon, the transformation of the guest suite was complete, but Victoria was not satisfied. I went into the downstairs bathroom, the one I had used for the past 5 years because it was easier on my knees than the stairs. I reached for my toothbrush and my hand grasped empty air. The counter which had held my simple toiletries, my shaving cream, and my blood pressure medication was now covered in an arsenal of glass bottles and jars. Serums, toners, creams that cost more than my first car. I looked down. In the corner, sitting in a damp cardboard box, were my things. My toothbrush was thrown in with a bar of soap collecting lint. I walked out to the living room where Victoria was supervising the placement of a white faux fur rug over my Persian carpet. "Victoria," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Where are my things from the bathroom?" She didn't even turn around. "Oh, Reggie," she said breezily. "I needed the shelf space. A woman has needs, you know. Besides, that old razor of yours looked like a tetanus shot waiting to happen. You can use the half bath under the stairs. It is smaller, so it should fit your lifestyle better." The half bath was a closet. It had a sink the size of a dinner plate and no shower. She was banishing me from my own bathroom in my own house. I looked at Isaiah, who was struggling to mount a massive flat-screen television on the wall. He caught my eye and quickly looked away, pretending to focus on a screw. "This house is just so dark," Victoria complained, walking to the window and yanking open the heavy velvet curtains Althea had sewn by hand. "It feels like a time capsule. And not a good one. It screams 1990. It is giving struggle, love, and poverty chic. We need to modernize everything if I'm going to have people over. I cannot have my friends thinking I married into a family that collects dust for a living." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted copper. I grabbed my keys and walked out the back door. I needed air. I needed to get away from the smell of her expensive perfume, which was slowly choking the scent of lavender and old books that had always defined my home. I drove to the market. I spent 2 hours walking the aisles, picking out fresh vegetables, looking at the prices, doing the math in my head, not because I had to, but because the routine calmed me. It was the only thing I had left that felt normal. When I pulled back into the driveway, the sun was high in the sky. The silver convertible was still there, gleaming like an insult. I carried my grocery bags up the steps, my knees aching slightly. I opened the front door, expecting to hear the television or maybe music. Instead, I heard a sound that made my blood run cold. It was the sound of glass breaking, followed by a laugh. The sound was coming from upstairs, from the master bedroom, from Althea's room. I dropped the grocery bags, eggs cracked and milk spilled across the floor, but I did not stop. I ran. I took the stairs 2 at a time, ignoring the pain in my joints. The door to the master bedroom was wide open. I stopped in the doorway and felt my heart shatter. The room was unrecognizable. The heavy oak 4-poster bed where my wife had slept, where she had taken her last breath, was dismantled and pushed into a corner. The walls, which had been a warm, soft cream, were being covered in bright white adhesive wallpaper. But that was not the worst of it. In the center of the room, Victoria had set up a ring light and a tripod. She was wearing tight yoga clothes, doing a stretch on a pink mat. And behind her, piled into black contractor bags like common trash, were Althea's things. Her books, her collection of vintage jazz records, the quilt she had spent 3 years stitching. "What are you doing?" I roared. The sound came from deep in my chest, a primal noise I did not know I could make. Victoria jumped. She turned off the ring light and looked at me with annoyance. "Jesus, Reggie, do not sneak up on people. I am filming content. The lighting in here is perfect for my wellness brand." I walked past her to the black bags. I looked inside. There, right on top, was a framed photograph of Althea and me from our 25th anniversary. The glass was cracked right down the middle, splitting my wife's face in two. Beneath it lay a Miles Davis vinyl of first pressing of Kind of Blue, cracked in half. "You threw them away," I whispered. My hands were trembling as I reached into the bag. "You threw her away." "It is just clutter," Reggie, Victoria said, rolling her eyes. "Look at this stuff. It is old. It smells musty. Nobody listens to records anymore. And those quilts, they are dust magnets. I need a clean aesthetic. Minimalist. Zen. I cannot have all this junk in my background." Junk. I stood up, holding the broken picture frame. "This is my life. This is my wife. I told you specifically, do not touch this room." Isaiah appeared in the doorway. He was holding a box of Althea's clothes. He looked at me, then at Victoria, then at the floor. "Dad, come on," he said, his voice weak. "Victoria needs a space to work. This room has the best natural light. Mom is gone, Dad. She does not need the room anymore. You have to stop holding on to the past. It is unhealthy. Unhealthy." I looked at my son, the boy whose diapers I changed, the boy whose hand I held when we buried his mother. "You are letting her do this. You are helping her erase your mother for a yoga video." "It is for my career," Reggie, Victoria snapped. "Not that you would understand. Being an influencer is real work. I need a professional environment." And frankly, this room was depressing. It looked like a shrine. It was creepy. She walked over to the bag I was holding. "Give me that," she said, reaching for the bag. "The trash collectors are coming tomorrow and I want this out of here." I pulled the bag back. "Do not touch it," I said. My voice was low, dangerous. "Do not touch another thing in this house." Victoria scoffed. She looked at Isaiah. "Are you going to let him talk to me like that?" "This is our home now too, Isaiah. You said we could make it ours." Isaiah looked at me. "Dad, please, just let her have the room. Why do you have to be so difficult? Why do you have to be so stubborn and old-fashioned? Just let it go." Old-fashioned. Difficult. I looked at my son. I saw the fear in his eyes. He was terrified of losing her. He was so desperate to please this woman that he was willing to desecrate his own mother's memory. He was willing to throw away his heritage, his history, just to keep her happy. I did not scream. I did not raise my hand. I simply bent down and picked up the black bags. They were heavy. They were filled with 40 years of love and memories that these two children had treated like garbage. "I will take these," I said. I walked past them. I carried the bags down the stairs, my heart feeling like a stone in my chest. I took them to the small study at the back of the house, the only room they had not yet invaded. I placed them gently on the floor. I would fix the frames later. I would glue the records if I could. I walked out of the study and locked the door. I put the key in my pocket. Then I walked to my desk. I sat down in my leather chair, the one Victoria had called hideous. I opened the bottom drawer and pulled out a burner phone I used for business dealings I wanted to keep separate from my personal life. I dialed a number I knew by heart. It rang twice before a sharp, professional female voice answered. "Patrice Hill." "Patrice," I said. "It is Reggie." There was a pause. "Reggie King. I have not heard from you in months. Is everything all right?" No, I said, staring at the locked door of my study. No, Patrice, everything is not all right. I need a favor, I said. And I need it done immediately. Name it, she said. Her voice shifted. She heard the steel in my tone. I need a full forensic audit, I said. On my son. On Isaiah. Patrice was silent for a moment. Isaiah. Your son, Isaiah. Yes, I said. I want to know everything. I want to know his credit score. I want to know his debts. I want to know exactly where every dime I have sent him for the last 5 years has gone. I want to see his bank statements. I want to know who holds the note on that silver car in my driveway. Reggie, Patrice said slowly. This is extreme. Did something happen? He brought a stranger into my house, I said, and they just tried to throw Althea in the trash. I heard the sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. Patrice had known Althea. She had respected her. Say no more, Reggie, she said. I will have a preliminary report for you by tomorrow morning. Do you want me to freeze the trust transfers? Not yet, I said. Not yet. Let them think the water is still flowing. I want to see how deep they swim before I pull the plug. I hung up the phone. Upstairs I could hear music thumping, bass heavy and loud, and Victoria was starting her workout. I could hear Isaiah laughing, a nervous, high-pitched sound. They thought they had won. They thought they had bullied a sad old man into submission. They thought they had taken over. I sat back in my chair and looked at the photo of Althea on my desk. Her eyes were warm, her smile gentle. She would have been heartbroken today, but she also would have been furious. They won a war, Althea, I whispered to the empty room. They want to play games with our legacy. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the overgrown rose garden Althea had loved so much. They have no idea, I said. They have absolutely no idea who they are dealing with. I was not just a retired contractor. I was the man who owned the building Isaiah S. Company rented. I was the silent partner in the dealership where he bought his car. I was the name on the deed of the land where Victoria S.'s favorite coffee shop stood. I had built this town, and I could tear their little lives apart brick by brick. The occupation had begun, but the resistance started now, and unlike them, I did not need to shout. I did not need ring lights or hashtags. I had patience. I had power. And I had the one thing they lacked completely. I had the receipts. I unlocked the study door and walked out into the hallway. The bass from upstairs was vibrating the pictures on the walls. I straightened a frame that had gone crooked. Enjoy the music, I thought. Dance while you can. Because the music is about to stop. And when it does, you are going to find out that you do not have a chair to sit on. Not in my house. Not anymore. Friday arrived like a storm front, dragging heavy humidity and the smell of expensive catering into my living room. I was in the kitchen brewing my morning coffee when Victoria swanned in. She was wearing a silk robe that dragged on the floor and holding a clipboard like she was organizing a military coup. Reggie, she said without looking up from her list. We need to talk about tonight. I took a sip of my coffee. Tonight was the housewarming party, or as she called it, the introduction to society. She had invited 20 of her friends from her old life, people I assumed were just like her, wealthy, white, and utterly convinced of their own superiority. What about tonight, I asked. Victoria finally looked at me. She chewed her lip, a nervous habit I had started to notice whenever she was about to ask for something particularly outrageous. My friends are coming, she said. People from Greenwich, people from the club. They are particular. They are not used to seeing extended family living arrangements. It confuses them. I set my mug down on the counter. It confuses them that a son lives with his father. No, she said quickly. It confuses them that the homeowner is present. Look, Reggie, I will be honest. I told them a small lie, just to smooth things over. A lie, I asked. I told them this is Isaiah's house, she said. And I told them I told them you are the help. The silence in the kitchen was thick enough to choke on. I looked at this woman standing in my kitchen, drinking coffee made with my water, and she had the audacity to tell me she had reduced me to a servant in my own home. The help, I repeated, my voice flat. Like a live-in property manager, Victoria said, waving her hand dismissively, or a butler. It sounds distinguished, really. It explains why you are here. It explains the demographic difference. Anyway, I bought you something to wear. She reached into a bag by the door and pulled out a white jacket. It was stiff polyester. It looked like something a waiter would wear at a cheap banquet hall. If you are going to be walking around during the party, you need to wear this, she said, holding it out. You can serve drinks. It will give you something to do. Or, if you prefer, you can just stay in your room downstairs. I put a small TV in there. You can watch your shows. Just do not come upstairs until everyone is gone. I looked at the jacket. Then I looked at her. You want me to wear a uniform, I asked. In the house I built with my own hands. It is just for one night, Reggie, she snapped, tossing the jacket onto the counter. Do not be so sensitive. These people are important. They are connections for Isaiah's career. If you ruin this, you are taking food out of your son's mouth. Do it for him, or stay in your room. I do not care which. Just be invisible. She turned on her heel and walked out, leaving the white jacket sitting there like a declaration of war. I did not touch the jacket. I left it right there on the counter next to the coffee pot. At 6 p.m, the doorbell started ringing. I could hear the high-pitched laughter and the clinking of bottles. I could hear Victoria's voice shrill and excited, greeting her guests. "Oh, welcome, come in," she was saying. "Sorry about the decor. We are planning a full-gut renovation soon. Everything is going to be marble." I was downstairs in the guest room, sitting on the edge of the bed. I could hear their footsteps on the ceiling. I could hear them judging my home, my life. "Stay in your room," she had said. "Be invisible." I stood up. I walked to the closet. I did not put on a suit. I did not put on the white jacket. I put on my favorite flannel shirt, the red and black plaid one with the fraying collar. I put on my work pants, the ones with the paint stains on the knee. I put on my heavy boots. I walked up the stairs. The living room was full of strangers. Men in pastel polo shirts holding imported beers. Women in cocktail dresses looking at my family photos with sneers. Victoria was in the center of the room holding a glass of wine, holding court. Isaiah was standing in the corner looking terrified. I walked right into the middle of the room. I did not serve drinks. I did not bow. I walked to my old leather recliner, the one Victoria hated, the one she had tried to cover with a throw blanket. I ripped the blanket off and threw it on the floor. I sat down. I picked up the remote. I turned on the television. I turned the volume up to 50. The room went silent. The chatter stopped. The music was drowned out by the sound of a game show host shouting about a new car. Victoria froze. Her face went from pale to a blotchy, angry red. She marched over to me, her heels clicking furiously. "Reggie," she hissed under her breath. "What are you doing? Go downstairs. Now." I ignored her. I watched the wheel spin on the screen. "Excuse me." A man with a sweater tied around his neck stepped forward. He looked at Victoria, then at me. "Victoria, is this the staff you mentioned?" He seems a bit confused. Victoria let out a nervous laugh. "Oh, yes. He is a bit senile. Poor thing. We try to be patient, but sometimes he wanders." I turned my head slowly. I looked the man in the eye. "I am not senile," I said clearly, "and I am not the staff. My name is Reginald King. I own this house. I own the chair you are leaning on, and I own the roof over your head." The man stepped back as if I had brandished a weapon. He looked at Victoria. "You said this was Isaiah's house," he said. "You said he was the groundskeeper." Victoria was trembling. Her hands were shaking so hard wine sloshed over the rim of her glass. "He is confused," she shrieked. "He does not know what he is saying. Isaiah, handle him." Isaiah stepped forward. He looked like he was about to vomit. "Dad, please," he whispered. "Just go downstairs. Please, do not do this to me." I looked at my son. I looked at the way he cowered before these people, these strangers who would not spit on him if he was on fire. "I am watching my show, son," I said. "If your guests do not like it, they know where the door is." The party died right there. It did not end with a bang, but with a shuffle of uncomfortable feet. The guests began to mutter excuses. The babysitter called. An early morning meeting. One by one they filed out, casting pitying glances at Victoria and fearful glances at me. Within 20 minutes the house was empty. The expensive catering trays sat untouched. The music had stopped. Victoria stood in the middle of the ruined party. She was vibrating with rage. She threw her wine glass at the wall. It shattered, leaving a red stain that looked like blood on the fresh white paint. "You spiteful old man," she screamed. She spun around to face me. "You ruined everything. Do you have any idea who those people were? Do you have any idea how important they were?" I stayed in my chair. I did not look at her. "You humiliated us," she yelled, walking closer, her finger pointing in my face. "We take you in. We let you live here. We let you share our space. And this is how you repay us, by embarrassing us in front of the elite. We let you live here, I repeated. Yes, she screamed. We allow you to stay here. You should be grateful. You should be on your knees thanking us. Instead, you act like you own the place. I do own the place, I said calmly. Not for long, she spat. Do you think we are stupid, Reggie? We know the truth. You are broke. You are a retired nobody living on a pension that barely covers the electric bill. Who do you think pays for everything around here? Isaiah does. She laughed a cruel, manic sound. You are a leech, she said. You feed off your son, you take his money, you live in his house, you eat his food, and you have the nerve to sit there and act high and mighty. You are nothing but a burden, a heavy, useless burden. I looked at Isaiah. He was standing by the window staring out at the dark street. He did not say a word. He did not defend me. He let her call me a leech. He let her call me useless. When we inherit this place, she continued, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper, we are going to bulldoze it. We are going to knock it down brick by brick. We are going to build a pool right where you are sitting, and I am going to swim in it and forget you ever existed. She grabbed a bottle of wine from the table and marched upstairs. Isaiah followed her head down like a beaten dog. I sat there for a long time. The television was still blaring, but I did not hear it. A leech. I stood up. My knees popped. I walked to my study and unlocked the door. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. There was a new email in my inbox. The sender was Patrice Hill. The subject line was simple, King Audit Results. I clicked it open. The document was 20 pages long. It was a detailed forensic accounting of my son's life for the past 5 years. I scrolled through the numbers, my eyes scanning the columns of red ink. Debts, loans, maxed out credit cards, and then I saw it. The employment history section. My heart stopped. Status unemployed. Last date of employment 8 months ago. I read it again. Isaiah had not had a job in 8 months. He had been pretending to go to work every morning. He had been putting on a suit, grabbing his briefcase, and driving to a coffee shop to sit for 8 hours. I scrolled down to the income section. Source of funds monthly transfer. Althea King Memorial Trust. $4,000. Source of funds emergency credit line. Guarantor Reginald King. I leaned back in my chair. The air left my lungs. They were not rich. They were not even comfortable. They were destitute. Every dress Victoria wore, every dinner they ate, every drop of gas in that silver convertible was paid for by me. The wedding that cost $50,000, they had put it on the credit cards I backed. They had drained the emergency fund I had set up for Isaiah's future children. They were living on my money. They were eating my food. They were wearing clothes I bought, and she had called me a leech. She had stood in my living room and called me a burden while wearing shoes paid for by my sweat. She had threatened to bulldoze my house while living under my roof for free. A cold smile spread across my face. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who has just been handed the keys to the kingdom. You think I am a leech, Victoria, I whispered to the empty room. You think I am useless. I picked up my phone. I dialed Patrice. Reggie, she answered on the first ring. Did you see it? I saw it, I said. He is drowning, Reggie, she said softly. He has nothing. He is over $200,000 in debt. The only thing keeping him afloat is you. That trust transfer and those credit cards are his life support. Pull the plug, I said. Reggie, are you sure? Patrice asked. If we cut him off, he will crash. Hard. That is the point, I said. I want it all gone, Patrice. Cancel the monthly transfer, freeze the trust. And the credit cards, report them as compromised. Shut them down tonight. It will be done, she said. And Patrice, I added, who holds the lease on that silver car? You do, she said. Well, R&A Investments does. You co-signed through the company 4 years ago. Repossess it, I said. Tonight, she asked. Tonight, I said. I want it gone before breakfast. I hung up the phone. I closed the laptop. I walked out of the study and went to the kitchen. I picked up the white waiter jacket Victoria had left on the counter. I held it up, looking at the cheap fabric. I walked to the trash can and dropped it in. Then I went to my room, the small guest room they had forced me into. I lay down on the narrow bed. Upstairs I could hear them arguing, muffled shouts, the sound of something being thrown. They were stressed. They were angry. They had no idea that the real storm was just beginning. Tomorrow morning, when Victoria tried to buy her $5 latte, she was going to find out what it really felt like to be broke. Tomorrow morning when Isaiah walked out to drive his fancy car, he was going to find an empty driveway. Leech. I closed my eyes. Okay, son, I thought. Okay, Victoria, you want to see who brings the food to the table? Let us see how you eat when the table is gone. Let us see how you survive when the invisible hand you bit finally stops feeding you. I slept soundly that night. The kind of deep, restful sleep that comes from knowing you have finally made the right decision. The kind of sleep that comes before a battle you know you are going to win. Saturday morning started with the chirping of birds and the vibration of my phone notifying me of an attempted transaction. It was a push notification from the credit card company, the one I had allowed Isaiah to use for emergencies since he was in college. The notification read, "Declined. Amount $8,000. Location Lux, living interiors." I sat on my front porch, rocking slowly in my chair, and took a sip of my black coffee. I could almost see the scene unfolding across town. I knew exactly what was happening because I knew Victoria. She had spent the last 2 days complaining about my furniture, calling my leather recliner a monstrosity and my dining table a piece of firewood. She had left the house an hour ago with Isaiah towing behind her, promising to bring this house into the 21st century. I imagined them standing at the counter of that overpriced showroom. Victoria had likely picked out a white sectional sofa, the kind that looks beautiful in a magazine but stains if you look at it wrong. She would have tossed the card onto the glass counter with that air of arrogance she wore like a second skin, expecting the clerk to bow and scrape. She probably tapped her manicured nails on the surface, waiting for the receipt. And then the silence. The clerk looking up with a polite but tight smile, saying, "I am sorry, ma'am, this card has been declined." I took another sip of coffee. The coffee tasted better today. Richer. Victoria would have laughed it off at first. She would have flipped her hair and said, "Try it again." It must be a chip error. The clerk would have swiped it again. Same result. Declined. By then the line behind them would be growing. People would be staring. The shame would start to creep up her neck, turning her pale skin a blotchy red. She would have turned to Isaiah, snapping her fingers, demanding his card. Isaiah would have pulled out his wallet, his hands shaking, because deep down he knew he lived on a lifeline I provided. He would have handed over his debit card, the one linked to the account where I deposited his monthly allowance from the Althea King Memorial Trust. Declined. Insufficient funds. I checked my phone again. Another notification. Attempted charge $5 at a coffee shop. Declined. She had tried to buy a latte to soothe her nerves, and even that had been denied. They were stranded in a luxury furniture store with negative balances and a mountain of pride that had just crumbled into dust. 20 minutes later, the silver convertible came screeching into the driveway. It took the turn so fast the tires left black marks on the pavement. I did not move. I stayed in my rocking chair watching the show. Isaiah jumped out of the car, leaving the door open. He looked wild. His hair was messy, his tie was crooked, and his eyes were wide with panic. Victoria followed him, but she did not look panicked. She looked murderous. She marched up the walkway, her heels clicking like gunshots on the concrete. "Dad," Isaiah shouted before he even reached the steps. "Dad, what is going on?" I looked at him calmly. "Good morning, son. Did you buy the furniture? Do not play games with me, Dad," he yelled, running up the steps, his face inches from mine. The cards did not work, none of them. The credit card, my debit card, even the emergency gas card. We were humiliated. The manager looked at us like we were criminals. He cut the card, Dad. He cut it right in front of everyone. I set my coffee cup down on the small table beside me. "That is unfortunate," I said. "But these things happen when you try to spend money you do not have. It is not money we do not have." Isaiah screamed. "It is the trust fund." I called the bank from the parking lot. They said the account has been frozen. They said the monthly transfer was canceled. They said the authorization for the credit line was revoked by the primary account holder. "That is you. Why did you do that?" Victoria stepped up beside him. She pushed Isaiah aside as if he were a piece of furniture she no longer liked. "Fix it," she demanded. Her voice was cold hard. "Call the bank right now and fix it. We have a hold on that sofa for 1 hour. I am not losing that delivery slot because of some banking error." I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had thrown my wife's photos in the trash. I looked at the woman who had called me a leech in my own living room. "It is not an error, Victoria," I said, "and I am not calling anyone." Isaiah stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "What do you mean?" "You canceled the transfer. Why?" "That is Mom's money. That is the trust fund. You cannot just take it away." I stood up slowly. My knees cracked, but I stood tall. I looked my son in the eye. "It is not your mother's money," I said, my voice steady. "It is my money. I set up that trust to help you get started in life, to help you build something, not to finance a lifestyle you cannot afford, not to buy $5,000 sofas when you do not have a job." Isaiah went pale. "You know," he whispered. "I know everything, Isaiah," I said. "I know you have not worked in 8 months. I know you are drowning in debt. I know this car in the driveway is 2 payments away from being repossessed. And I know that instead of coming to me like a man and asking for help, you decided to lie. You decided to marry a woman who treats me like garbage and bring her into my house to disrespect me. So I cut it off. I picked up my empty coffee cup. I am done funding your fantasy, son. The well is dry." Victoria let out a shrill laugh. It sounded like glass breaking. "This is a joke, right? You are punishing us because I moved some furniture around. You are throwing a tantrum because I wanted to update this dump." I looked at her. "You called me a leech, Victoria. You stood in my house and called me a burden. You said Isaiah paid for everything. Well, now is your chance to prove it." I gestured to the driveway. "You are a wealthy woman, aren't you? You come from money. Your family is elite. Why are you so upset about a few $1,000s? Surely you can buy your own sofa. Surely you can support your husband since he is currently unemployed." Victoria's face twisted. Her beauty dissolved, leaving something ugly and snarling underneath. "My money is tied up in investments," she spat. "You do not understand how wealth works. You cannot just liquidate assets for a sofa." I chuckled. "Is that so? Or is it that you are just as broke as he is?" "How dare you!" she screamed, stepping forward, her hand raising as if she might strike me again. But this time I did not flinch. I stared her down and she lowered her hand, clenching it into a fist at her side. "You are a cruel old man," she hissed. "You invited us to live here. You promised to help us, and now you are trying to starve us out." "I am not starving anyone," I said. "There is food in the fridge. There is a roof over your head. That is more than most people have. But the luxury ride is over. If you want a new sofa, buy it. If you want expensive dinners, pay for them. If you want gas for that car, earn it." Isaiah looked at me, tears welling in his eyes. "Dad, please. You do not understand. We have bills. The credit card minimums alone are $3,000 a month. If we miss a payment, my credit score will tank. I will never get another loan." "Then get a job," I said. "Pick up a shovel, work at a fast food joint. Do what you have to do. That is what a man does, Isaiah. A man does not live off his retired father and let his wife insult him." Isaiah looked at the ground. He looked defeated. He looked small. But Victoria was not defeated. She was calculating. I could see the gears turning behind her eyes. She looked at the house. She looked at the neighborhood. She looked at me. "Fine," she said, her voice dropping to a low, venomous tone. "You want to play hardball, Reggie? We can play hardball." She walked over to Isaiah and grabbed his arm, pulling him upright. "Listen to me, old man," she said, pointing a finger at my chest. "You think you hold all the cards because you control the bank account, but you are forgetting something very important." "What is that?" I asked. "This house," she said. "This house is an asset, a valuable one, and Isaiah is your only son, your only heir." She took a step closer, invading my personal space. "You are getting old, Reggie. We have all noticed it. You are forgetting things. You are becoming irrational, paranoid, aggressive." I narrowed my eyes. "What are you talking about?" "I am talking about your mental state," she said, a cruel smile playing on her lips. "It is deteriorating, fast. Just look at you, cutting off your only child, hoarding money, living in squalor. These are signs of dementia." She looked at Isaiah. "Isn't that right, Isaiah? Your father has been acting strange lately. Hasn't he? Confused? Angry?" Isaiah looked at her, then at me. He looked terrified, but he did not say no. "If you are not capable of managing your own affairs," she continued, her voice silky with threat, "then the state will appoint someone who can. A guardian. And since Isaiah is your next of kin, that guardian will be him." My blood ran cold. They were not just threatening to leave. They were threatening to take over. They were threatening to declare me incompetent, to strip me of my rights, to lock me away so they could get their hands on my assets. "You would not dare," I whispered. "Try me," she said. "Open that account back up, Reggie. Restore the transfer. Pay off the credit cards. Or so help me, God, I will have you in a nursing home so fast your head will spin." And once you are locked away, we will sell this house. We will sell every stick of furniture. And we will spend every dime you saved while you rot in a state facility." She grabbed Isaiah's hand. "Come on, honey," she said, pulling him toward the door. "Let us go inside. Your father needs to rest. He is clearly having an episode." They walked past me into the house. Isaiah would not meet my eyes. He let her drag him inside, let her threaten his own father with a fate worse than death. I stood on the porch, my hands shaking. Not from fear, but from a cold, hard rage. They had crossed the line. They had threatened my freedom. They had threatened my mind. I looked at the closed door. "You want a war," I thought. "You want to question my competence." I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I dialed Patrice again. "It is me," I said when she answered. "Reggie," she said, her voice concerned. "What happened?" "They just threatened me," I said. "They threatened to have me declared incompetent. They threatened to take guardianship." There was a silence on the line. Then Patrice spoke, her voice sharp as a razor. "That is a declaration of war, Reggie." "I know," I said. "What do you want to do?" she asked. "I want to accelerate the plan," I said. "And Patrice, I want you to find out everything you can about Victoria. Where she comes from. Who her family really is. She says she has investments. She says she is elite. I want to know if that is true, or if she is just another liar living on credit." "I am on it," she said. "And one more thing," I added, looking at the silver car in the driveway. "Send the tow truck, now." I hung up the phone. I walked back into my house. Victoria was in the kitchen, loudly complaining about the lack of oat milk. Isaiah was sitting at the table, his head in his hands. I walked past them to my room. I did not say a word. I did not need to. They thought they had trapped me. They thought they had the ultimate trump card. But they had made a fatal error. They had assumed I was a helpless old man. They didn't know that I had been building things my whole life, and I knew exactly where the structural weaknesses were. I sat on my bed and listened. I listened for the sound of a heavy diesel engine. I listened for the sound of chains. 20 minutes later it came. The rumble of a tow truck backing into the driveway. I heard Victoria scream. I heard Isaiah shout. I heard the front door fly open. I stayed on my bed. I closed my eyes and smiled. The first brick had just fallen, and the wall was about to come down. The towing of the silver convertible was a declaration of war, but Victoria did not scream or throw things immediately. Instead, she went silent. It was a cold, calculating silence that lasted for 2 days. She moved through the house like a ghost, her eyes fixed on something only she could see. Isaiah was a wreck. He walked to the bus stop in his expensive suit, looking like a king who had lost his crown. He avoided me entirely, slipping in and out of the house like a thief. I knew they were planning something. I could feel it in the air like the static before a thunderstorm. I just did not know how low they were willing to go until Wednesday evening. Wednesday started with a surprise. Victoria knocked on my bedroom door. She was holding a tray with tea and cookies. Her smile was tight, pasted on like a sticker, but it was there. "Reggie," she said, her voice sugary sweet. I wanted to apologize. "Things have been tense. We got off on the wrong foot. I want to make it up to you. I am cooking dinner tonight. Just a small family gathering. I invited an old friend of mine. He is a very smart man, a doctor. I think you will find him fascinating." I looked at the tea. I looked at her. I knew it was a trap. A wolf does not bring cookies to the sheep unless the cookies are poisoned or the sheep is about to be dinner. But I nodded. I wanted to see what card she was playing. I wanted to see how far she would go. "That sounds lovely, Victoria," I said. "I will be there." At 7 o'clock, I walked into the dining room. Victoria had set the table with my good china, the plates Althea only used for Thanksgiving. There were candles burning. And sitting at the head of the table in my chair was a man I had never met. He was thin with wire-rimmed glasses and a suit that cost more than my first house. He did not stand up when I entered. He just watched me over the rim of his wine glass like he was studying a specimen in a jar. "Reggie," Victoria chirped, pulling out a chair for me. Not the head of the table, but the side. "The spot for the children. This is Dr. Eris Thorne. He is a dear friend from the club. He specializes in geriatric psychology." I sat down. Geriatric psychology. The trap was not subtle. It was a bear trap sitting right in the middle of the mashed potatoes. Dr. Thorne smiled. It was a smile that did not reach his eyes. Please call me Aries, he said. Victoria has told me so much about you. She says you have had a difficult time lately. Adjusting to new living arrangements can be very stressful for the elderly. Confusion is quite common. I unfolded my napkin. I am not confused. Dr. Thorne, I said, I know exactly where I am, and I know exactly who owns this table you are sitting at. Thorne chuckled, a dry, condescending sound. Of course you do, Reggie. Aggression is often the first defense mechanism when the mind starts to slip. Tell me, have you been feeling angry lately? Do you feel like people are stealing from you? I looked at Isaiah. He was staring at his plate, cutting his meat into tiny pieces. He knew what this was. He knew they were setting me up. He knew they were trying to paint me as paranoid and aggressive to build a case for incompetence, and he was saying nothing. I am not paranoid, I said, taking a sip of water. I am observant. There is a difference. Victoria poured more wine for the doctor. Reggie has been having these episodes, Aries, she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. He forgets things. He thinks he sees things. Just the other day he thought he saw a tow truck take our car away. He got very agitated. He started shouting about debts and loans that do not exist. I gripped my fork. The tow truck was real, Victoria. The neighbors saw it. The driver saw it. You saw it. Thorne pulled a small notebook from his pocket and made a note. Hallucinations grounded in reality, he muttered. Fascinating. And does he often forget basic hygiene, Victoria? I notice a distinct odor. I froze. I had showered an hour ago. I was wearing a crisp, clean shirt. I smelled of soap and Old Spice just like I had for 40 years. He refuses to let us help him in the bathroom, Victoria whispered, leaning in as if sharing a shameful secret. We try to be patient, but sometimes he has accidents. He hides his soiled clothes in the closet. It is heartbreaking, really. It was a lie. A filthy, disgusting lie designed to strip me of my dignity, designed to make me look like an animal. I looked at Isaiah again. Son, I said, my voice steady, are you going to let her say that? You know that is not true. Isaiah looked up. His eyes were wet. He looked at Victoria, then at the doctor. Then he looked at me. Dad, he said, his voice shaking, you do forget sometimes. It is okay. We just want to help you. The betrayal hit me harder than any physical blow. My son, my flesh and blood, was gaslighting me. He was rewriting reality to please his wife. He was helping them put me in a cage. I felt a flash of pure white-hot rage. I wanted to flip the table. I wanted to scream. But then I saw it. Victoria S.'s phone was propped up against the flower vase in the center of the table. The camera lens was facing me. A tiny red light was blinking. She was recording. She wanted me to explode. She wanted me to scream and throw things so she could show a judge. Look, Your Honor. Look how violent he is. Look how dangerous. He needs to be put away. I took a deep breath. I forced my muscles to relax. I forced my face into a mask of confusion. I leaned back in my chair. I let my mouth hang open slightly. I let my hand tremble as I reached for my water glass. Maybe you are right, I mumbled, my voice slurring just a little. Maybe I am forgetting. Sometimes I do not know what day it is. Is it Sunday? Victoria S.'s eyes lit up. She exchanged a triumphant look with Thorne. It is Wednesday, Reggie Thorne said, his voice taking on a soothing, hypnotic tone. Tell me, Reggie, do you ever hear voices? Do you ever feel like you need to hurt yourself or others? I looked down at the table. Sometimes I said softly. Sometimes I hear voices. Thorne leaned forward, eager. What do they say, Reggie? They say, I said, slowly raising my head. They say that Dr. Aris Thorne is currently under investigation by the State Medical Board for insurance fraud. The room went dead silent. The only sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. Thorne froze. His fork hovered halfway to his mouth. What did you say? He whispered. I sat up straight. The tremor in my hand vanished. The confusion in my eyes cleared. I looked him dead in the face. I said, I hear voices. I continued, my voice strong and clear. And they also tell me that in 2019 you settled a lawsuit out of court. A patient named Sarah Miller. Her family sued you for overprescribing sedatives to facilitate a change in her will. The settlement was sealed, but the case number was 492-B right here in this county. Thorne's face went from pale to a sickly shade of green. He dropped his fork. It clattered loudly against the china. Victoria looked between us, her mouth open. What is he talking about, Aris? He is crazy. He is making this up. I am not making anything up, I said. I pulled my phone from my pocket. I opened the email Patrice had sent me that afternoon. She had done her job well. She had dug deep. I also hear, I said, scrolling through the document, that your license is currently on probation. Something about an inappropriate relationship with a patient at the Golden Oak nursing facility. Is that true, doctor? Thorne stood up so fast his chair tipped over backward. Who are you? He demanded, his voice cracking. How do you know that? I am the man whose house you are sitting in, I said. I am the man you are trying to frame, and I am the man who is going to send this file to the district attorney if you do not walk out that door in the next 30 seconds. Thorne looked at Victoria. You said he was senile. You said he was a confused old contractor. You did not tell me he had resources. He is, Victoria screamed, standing up. He is lying. He is just guessing. Eris, sit down. Finish the evaluation. We need that signature. I cannot do this, Thorne stammered, backing away from the table. I cannot be involved in this. If he knows about Sarah, I am out. I am done. Do not call me again, Victoria. He turned and ran. He did not walk, he ran. He grabbed his coat from the rack and bolted out the front door, leaving it wide open to the night air. I looked at the open door, then back at the table. Victoria was standing there, shaking with rage. Her perfect plan, her dinner party ambush, had just blown up in her face. Isaiah was staring at me with a look of pure shock. Dad, how did you? How? I looked at my son. I looked at the man who had sat there and agreed that I smelled bad. You picked the wrong side, son, I said quietly. Victoria snatched her phone from the table. She stopped the recording. You think you are so smart? She hissed. You think because you scared off one doctor you have won. You have won nothing. This just proves you are dangerous. You threatened a medical professional. I have it on video. You have a video of me reading public records, I said. Show that to a judge, Victoria. See what happens. See who ends up in handcuffs. She glared at me, hate radiating off her in waves. You are going to regret this, she said. You are going to wish you were senile. Because what I am going to do next, you will not see it coming. She stormed out of the room, headed for the stairs. Isaiah stood up slowly. Dad, I didn't mean... Save it, I said. I picked up my wine glass and took a sip. It was good wine, expensive, paid for with my money. Clean up this mess, I said, gesturing to the table. And Isaiah washed the dishes by hand. The dishwasher uses too much electricity, and since you are not paying the bill, we need to economize. He stood there for a moment, looking like he wanted to argue, looking like he wanted to beg, but then he looked at my face. He saw the stone wall I had built around my heart. He picked up the plates. I walked to my room downstairs. I locked the door. I sat on my bed and let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for an hour. My hands were shaking now, not from age, but from adrenaline. That had been close, too close. If Patrice hadn't sent that file an hour before dinner, if I hadn't read it immediately, Thorne might have succeeded. He might have signed a paper that locked me away forever. They were desperate, and desperate people are dangerous. I knew this wasn't over. The doctor was just the first attempt. Victoria would not stop. She needed my money. She needed my house. And she needed me gone. I needed to move faster. I needed to secure the assets. I needed to make sure that even if they managed to put me away, they would get nothing. I took out my phone and texted Patrice. Phase 1 complete. The doctor is gone, but they are escalating. We need to move to the real estate assets. Tomorrow. She replied instantly. Agreed. Meet me at the office at 9. And Reggie, watch your back. I put the phone down. I could hear Isaiah in the kitchen, the clinking of dishes, the running water. He was doing as he was told. For now. But I knew the real danger wasn't Isaiah. It was Victoria. She was upstairs, probably plotting her next move. She wouldn't use a doctor next time. She would use something blunter, something harder to disprove. I wedged a chair under the doorknob of my bedroom. It was a precaution Althea would have laughed at. But Althea never had to sleep in a house with wolves. I lay down in the dark, listening to the house settle. You want a war, I thought. You got one. But you forgot one thing, Victoria. I built this house. I know where the foundations are buried. And I know exactly how to bring the roof down on your head without getting a scratch on myself. Tomorrow we would talk about the house. Tomorrow I would show them that the ground they stood on was not solid. It was quicksand. And they were already sinking. Thursday morning arrived with a silence that felt heavier than the humidity hanging over my rose garden. After the disaster with Dr. Thorne, the house had fallen into a quiet rhythm of avoidance. Isaiah left early, pretending to go to a job he did not have. Victoria stayed in her room until noon, probably plotting her next move or complaining to her mother on the phone about the stubborn old man downstairs. I spent my time where I always felt closest to Althea, in the garden. I was on my knees in the dirt pruning the rose bushes Althea had planted 30 years ago. They were overgrown, wild and thorny, just like life had become, but under my care they were starting to bloom again. It was peaceful work, honest work. The kind of work that clears a man's mind and lets him see the landscape of his problems with clarity. Around 10 o'clock, a sleek black sedan pulled into the driveway. It was not a tow truck this time. It was a luxury vehicle, the kind real estate agents drive to impress clients who care more about the car than the house. A man stepped out. He was tall, white, and wearing a suit that was too blue and too tight. He carried a leather portfolio and projected an air of aggressive confidence. I watched him from behind a large azalea bush. He checked his watch, then adjusted his tie in the reflection of his car window. The front door of my house opened and Victoria stepped out. She was wearing a white sundress and a wide-brimmed hat, looking for all the world like the lady of the manor. She glided down the steps, her smile bright and fake. "Mr. Harrington," she called out, extending a hand. "Thank you so much for coming on such short notice." Mr. Harrington took her hand. "The pleasure is mine, Mrs. King. You mentioned over the phone that you are looking for an expedited sale. Cash buyers preferred." "That is correct," Victoria said, linking her arm through his. "We have a bit of a family emergency. My father-in-law, his health is failing rapidly. We need to liquidate the asset to pay for his long-term care facility. It is a tragedy, really, but we have to do what is best for him." I froze with my shears in hand. They were not just trying to steal the house. They were selling it out from under me while I was still living in it, using my health as the excuse. Harrington nodded solemnly. "I understand completely. It is a difficult time. Let us take a look at the property. The market in this neighborhood is hot right now. Even a fixer-upper like this could fetch a premium price if we market it as a teardown. A teardown." My hands clenched around the gardening shears. They walked toward the garden path, right past where I was kneeling. I stood up, wiping the dirt from my knees. Harrington stopped when he saw me. He looked surprised, then uncomfortable. "Oh," Victoria said, waving a dismissive hand in my direction. "Do not mind him. That is just Reggie. He does the yard work. He is a bit slow, but he keeps the grass cut." She looked me dead in the eye as she said it. She called me Reggie. She called me the yard work. She stripped me of my name, my title, and my dignity in one sentence. "Reggie," she said, her voice taking on that condescending tone she used with service workers. "Why do you not go take a break around the back? We are discussing business." I looked at Harrington. He did not even look at me. He just looked past me as if I were part of the landscaping. I said nothing. I just nodded slowly, picked up my bucket, and walked around the corner of the house. But I did not go far. I circled back to this kitchen window, which was open to let in the breeze. I stood there in the shadows and listened. They walked through the house. I could hear Victoria's heels clicking on the hardwood floors. I could hear her voice echoing through the rooms I had built. "The kitchen is a gut job, obviously," she was saying. "Those cabinets are solid oak, but they are so dated. We would rip all of this out, open up the floor plan, put in an island." Harrington hummed in agreement. "The layout is traditional," he said. "Buyers today want open concepts." "You are right. The value here is in the land. The lot size is impressive." "Exactly," Victoria said. "We figure the house itself is worthless. We just want to sell the dirt. The new owners can bulldoze it and build something modern, something that actually fits the neighborhood. Bulldoze it." I leaned against the brick wall of my house. I remembered laying these bricks. I remembered Althea mixing the mortar. I remembered Isaiah running through these rooms as a toddler, his laughter bouncing off the walls. And this woman who had contributed nothing but debt and misery was walking through my life planning its demolition. They walked out onto the back patio. Isaiah had joined them. He must have been hiding in the house waiting for the signal. "This is my husband, Isaiah." Victoria introduced him. "He is the sole heir. His father is, he is not really capable of making decisions anymore. He signed the power of attorney last week." Another lie. A bold, dangerous lie. Harrington sat down at the patio table. He opened his portfolio and pulled out a sleek laptop. "Well," he said, typing away, If the power of attorney is in order, we can move fast. I can have a listing agreement ready today. I have developers who are looking for lots exactly like this. We could probably close in 2 weeks. 2 weeks, Isaiah asked, his voice sounding tight. That fast. Cash is king, Harrington said with a wink. Developers do not like to wait. Now I just need to pull up the deed records from the county database to verify the plot lines and tax status. Standard procedure. He tapped on his keyboard. Victoria poured him a glass of lemonade, my lemonade made with my lemons. This will be such a relief, she sighed. Once this is done, we can finally get Reggie the care he needs. And we can move on with our lives. I held my breath. I knew what was coming. I had been waiting for this moment since I made that phone call to Patrice 3 days ago. Harrington frowned at his screen. He tapped a few more keys. He adjusted his glasses. Is there a problem? Victoria asked, sensing the shift in his demeanor. Harrington looked up. His face was no longer smooth and professional. It was confused. You said this house belongs to your father, Mr. Reginald King. Yes, Isaiah said. My father built it. It has been in his name for 40 years. Harrington turned the laptop screen toward them. According to the county records, he said, his voice cooling considerably. This property is not owned by Reginald King. Victoria laughed nervously. What do you mean? Of course it is. Who else would own it? The deed was transferred 5 years ago, Harrington said. The current owner of record is a corporate entity, R&A Investments, LLC. Isaiah blinked. R&A Investments. I have never heard of them. Harrington looked at Isaiah with a new suspicion. You said you had power of attorney for your father, but your father does not own this house. The corporation does. Do you have power of attorney for the corporation? Are you a corporate officer? Isaiah looked at Victoria. She looked pale. I do not know, Isaiah stammered. Maybe he put it in a company for tax reasons. But I am his son. I am his heir. It is the same thing. It is absolutely not the same thing, Harrington snapped, closing his laptop. A corporation is a separate legal entity. Unless you are the registered agent or the CEO, you have no authority to sell this property. None. Zero. He stood up, gathering his things. You wasted my time, he said, his voice angry. You brought me out here to sell a house you do not own. Do you know what that is? It is fraud. Attempted fraud. No. Victoria shrieked, standing up. You do not understand. The old man is confused. He must have forgotten to tell us. Just look up the owner of the company. It has to be him. If it is him, then Isaiah has control because of the power of attorney. Harrington hesitated. He opened the laptop again. He typed furiously. R&A Investments, LLC, he read. Registered agent, Patrice Hill, Esquire. He scrolled down. Managing member and CEO, Reginald King, C. Victoria cried triumphantly. It is him. It is Reggie. So we can sell it. Harrington looked at her like she was an idiot. No, you cannot, he said. Corporate bylaws are not subject to a standard personal power of attorney unless specifically stated. And even if they were, you told me you had the paperwork. Do you have paperwork giving Isaiah King control of R&A Investments? Victoria stared at him. No, she whispered. Then we are done here, Harrington said. He shoved his laptop into his bag. He looked at Isaiah with disgust. You people are unbelievable, he said, trying to sell a corporate asset behind the CEO's back. Do not call me again. If I catch wind of you trying this with another broker, I will report you to the real estate board. He stormed off the patio, marching through the house and out the front door. I waited a beat. Then I walked around the corner. Victoria was standing by the table, her hands gripping the edge so hard her knuckles were white. Isaiah had his head in his hands. I walked up the patio steps. I picked up the glass of lemonade Harrington had left untouched. I took a long, slow sip. Victoria spun around. Her eyes were wild. R&A, she hissed. Reggie and Althea. I smiled. It was a cold, hard smile. You figured it out, I said. You are smarter than you look, Victoria. You put the house in a company she accused. You hid it from us. I did not hide anything, I said. I protected it, just like I protected the apartment complex on 4th Street, and the commercial strip on Main, and the warehouse district downtown. Isaiah looked up. His eyes were wide. "What are you talking about, Dad?" "I am talking about my business, son," I said. "The business you never asked about. The business you thought was just me pouring concrete. R&A Investments owns 12 properties in this county, Isaiah. And I own R&A Investments." I leaned forward, placing my hands on the table. "And you know what the best part is?" I asked. They stared at me in silence. "The bylaws," I said. "I wrote them myself with Patrice. They state very clearly that in the event of my incapacitation or death, control of the company does not pass to my next of kin. It passes to a board of trustees." I looked at Isaiah. "You are not on the board, son, and neither is your wife." Victoria looked like she was going to be sick. She realized in that moment that her plan, her entire strategy of declaring me incompetent, was useless. Even if they locked me away, they would get nothing. The house would be managed by lawyers. The money would be locked tight. You old bastard," she whispered. I stood up straight. "Get off my patio," I said. "What?" she gasped. "I said get off my patio," I repeated, my voice rising. "Get out of my sight. Go to your room. Go anywhere but here, because right now looking at you makes me want to vomit." Isaiah stood up. "Dad, please." "Do not speak to me," I said to him. "You stood there and let her call me the yard man. You let her try to sell your mother's home. You are not a son, you are a thief." I turned and walked back into the house, leaving them standing in the ruins of their scheme. I went to my study and called Patrice. "They tried to sell the house," I said. "I know," she said. "My system flagged a credit check on the property deed 10 minutes ago." "Harrington Realty, right, yes," I said. He walked out. "Good," Patrice said. "But Reggie, they are going to get desperate now. They know there is a fortune. They know they cannot touch it. They are going to lash out." "I know," I said, looking out the window at the rose garden. Victoria was standing there now. She was staring at the roses. She was not looking at them with appreciation. She was looking at them with hatred. She was looking at them like they were the enemy. "She is going to try to hurt me," I said. "Be careful," Reggie Patrice warned. "I am not the one who needs to be careful," I said, watching Victoria kick a bloom off a bush. I hung up the phone. The real estate scam had failed. The medical scam had failed. Now they were trapped, broke, desperate, and living in the house of a man they could not control. Victoria turned and looked at the window where I was standing. She could not see me through the reflection, but I could see her. Her face was twisted into a mask of pure malice. She looked at the garden. Then she looked back at the house. She pulled out her phone and made a call. She spoke for a minute, gesturing wildly at the yard. I did not know who she was calling, but I knew one thing. She was done playing nice. She was done with doctors and lawyers. She was going to go for the heart. She was going to try to destroy the one thing I loved more than the money, more than the house. She was going to come for Althea. I watched her stomp back toward the house. Let her come, I thought. Let her try. Because the next time she stepped out of line, I wasn't just going to cut her off. I was going to bury her. Not in the ground, but in paperwork so deep she would never see the sun again. The rumbling started at 7 in the morning, a low vibration that shook the coffee in my mug. It was not the sound of traffic, and it was not the sound of a storm. It was the mechanical growl of heavy diesel machinery. I stood at my kitchen window, looking out at the backyard, expecting to see the city working on a power line or maybe a neighbor fixing a fence. What I saw made the ceramic mug slip from my fingers and shatter on the floor. A massive yellow bulldozer sat in the middle of my backyard, its metal tracks tearing deep gouges into the green lawn I had manicured for decades. It was positioned directly in front of the rose garden, Althea S. garden. The garden was not just plants. It was 30 years of my wife's life. She had planted the first bush the week we moved in. She had planted a new variety for every anniversary, for every birthday, for the day Isaiah graduated high school. That garden was her diary written in petals and thorns. It was the place where her ashes were scattered. It was sacred ground. And standing next to the bulldozer, pointing a manicured finger at the blooms, was Victoria. She was wearing oversized sunglasses and holding a cup of coffee, looking like a demolition foreman who had never touched dirt in her life. Isaiah stood a few feet behind her, his hands in his pockets, looking at the ground. I did not bother with shoes. I ran out the back door in my socks, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Stop!" I shouted, running toward them. "Turn it off! Stop it right now!" The operator of the bulldozer, a young man in a safety vest, looked at me, then at Victoria. He idled the engine, but did not cut it. The noise dropped to a steady chug that filled the morning air with the smell of exhaust fumes. Victoria turned to me. She did not look surprised. She looked bored. "Good morning, Reggie," she said, shouting over the engine. "I see you are finally awake. We are making some improvements." Improvements? I stepped between the machine and the roses, my arms spread wide. "This is my wife's garden. You are not touching a single leaf." Victoria took a sip of her coffee. "Actually, we are clearing the lot," she said calmly. "We did a market analysis. This garden is an eyesore. It is dated. It screams, old lady. We are putting in an infinity pool. It will increase the property value by 20%. You should be thanking me. I am securing your investment." "You are insane," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "You are not building a pool. You do not own this house. You do not own this land. Get this machine out of here before I call the police." Victoria laughed. "Go ahead, call them. Tell them you are obstructing renovations on a property your son has power of attorney over. Oh wait, you revoked that, didn't you? Well, it does not matter, because this operator has a work order signed by me, and he gets paid whether he digs or not." She walked closer to me until she was just a few feet away. She lowered her sunglasses and looked me in the eye. "This is not about a pool, Reggie," she hissed so the operator could not hear. "This is about leverage." "Leverage?" I asked. "You humiliated me at the furniture store," she said. "You humiliated me in front of the realtor. You cut off our money. You think you can just starve us out. You think you can treat us like children. Well, today you are going to learn that actions have consequences." She reached into her oversized tote bag and pulled out a thick document. It was clipped together with a blue legal binder. "This is a transfer of ownership agreement," she said, holding it up. "It transfers 51% of the controlling shares of R&A Investments to Isaiah King, effective immediately." She held the papers out to me. "Sign it," she said. "Sign it right now, and the machine goes away. The roses stay. Althea's little shrine remains untouched." I stared at the papers. It was blackmail, pure and simple. She was holding my wife as memory hostage for a controlling stake in my company. She wanted the empire I had built. She wanted the power. "And if I do not sign," I asked, my voice low. "Then I give the signal," she said. "And in 5 minutes this entire garden will be nothing but mud and mulch. I will tear up every single root. I will pave over the spot where you scattered her ashes. I will erase her, Reggie, just like you tried to erase me." I looked at the bulldozer. The blade was massive steel and cold, hovering just inches above a bush of yellow roses Althea had planted for her 50th birthday. I looked past Victoria to Isaiah. My son was standing 10 feet away. He was watching us. He heard every word. He knew what that garden meant. He knew. I remembered a summer day 20 years ago. Isaiah was 12. He had accidentally kicked a soccer ball into the garden and broken a stem. Althea hadn't yelled. She had shown him how to tape it back together, how to heal it. She had taught him that living things need protection. She had taught him that you nurture what you love. "Isaiah," I called out. My voice was not angry anymore. It was pleading. It was the voice of a father begging his child to be human. "Isaiah, look at me. This is your mother's garden. Her ashes are in that soil. You helped her plant that white bush in the corner. Do you remember?" Isaiah looked up. His face was pale. He looked at the garden. He looked at the white bush. I saw a flicker of pain in his eyes. I saw the memory surface. "Son," I said, "please, do not let her do this. Tell her to stop. Be the man your mother raised. Be the man I know you are." Isaiah looked at Victoria. She did not say a word. She just looked at him. She tapped her foot impatiently. It was a look of total dominance. It was a look that said, "Choose me or lose everything." Isaiah looked back at me. He swallowed hard. He opened his mouth to speak. "She is right, Dad," he said, his voice cracking. "A pool would add more value. The garden is... It is just plants, Dad. Mom is gone. You have to let go." He turned his back. He turned his back on me. He turned his back on his mother. He turned his back on his soul. Something inside me died in that moment. It was not my heart. It was my hope. For 32 years I had made excuses for him. I had told myself he was weak but kind. I had told myself he was influenced by bad people but had a good core. I was wrong. He was not weak. He was hollow. He was a shell of a man filled with nothing but fear and greed. Victoria smiled. A cruel, victorious smile. "Well, Reggie," she said, holding out the pen, "what is it going to be?" the ink or the blade. I looked at the document. I looked at the garden. The morning sun was hitting the dew on the petals, making them sparkle like diamonds. It was beautiful. It was perfect. And it was just a thing. Althea was not in those bushes. Althea was in the wind. She was in the sky. She was in the strength of the foundation I had poured. She was in me. She would never want me to sign my life away to these vultures just to save some flowers. She would tell me to burn the garden to the ground before I let them win. I stepped back. I moved away from the machine. Victoria's smile faltered. "What are you doing?" she asked. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I opened the camera app. I hit record. "I am stepping aside." "Victoria," I said. She blinked. "You are what?" "I am stepping aside," I repeated, calmly lifting the phone to frame the shot. I aimed it at her holding the blackmail papers. I aimed it at Isaiah standing with his back turned. I aimed it at the bulldozer. "Do it," I said. She stared at me. "You are bluffing. You love this stupid garden. You cry over it." "I do love it," I said, "but I love my dignity more. And I will not sell my soul to a terrorist." I kept the camera steady. "Go ahead, Victoria," I said, my voice ringing out across the yard. "Give the order. Destroy your mother-in-law's grave. Let the world see exactly who you are. Let the world see what Isaiah King allows his wife to do to his own mother's memory." Victoria's face turned purple. Her hands shook. She looked at the operator who was watching us with wide eyes. "Do it," she shrieked. "Level it. Level it all." The operator hesitated. "Lady, he is filming. I do not pay you to think Victoria screamed. I pay you to dig. Destroy it now." The operator shrugged. He pulled the lever. The engine roared to life, black smoke belching into the air. The massive steel blade lowered. I did not look away. I watched through the screen of my phone. The blade hit the first bush. The sound of wood snapping was loud, sickening, like bones breaking. The yellow roses were crushed into the mud. The machine surged forward. It tore through the soil, ripping up roots that had held fast for decades. I watched the red roses fall. I watched the white bush Isaiah had planted disappear under the tracks. I watched the bench where Althea used to sit turn into splinters. I did not cry. I did not scream. I stood like a statue, recording every second of the carnage. I zoomed in on Isaiah. He did not turn around. He hunched his shoulders against the sound of the destruction, but he did not move to stop it. I recorded his cowardice. I recorded his shame. It took 10 minutes to destroy 30 years of beauty. When the machine finally stopped, the backyard was a churned, muddy wasteland. There was nothing left but dirt and broken stems. Victoria stood amidst the ruin, breathing hard. She looked at me, expecting to see a broken man. She expected to see me on my knees, weeping in the dirt. Instead, I lowered my phone. I saved the video. I sent a copy to the cloud. I sent a copy to Patrice. Then I looked at her. "Are you happy?" I asked. She looked unsure. Her victory felt empty. "You should have signed," she muttered. "You made me do this." I walked up to her. I stood toe-to-toe with her. "You think you won?" I asked quietly. "You think because you killed some plants you have power over me?" I pointed to the mud. "That was the only thing keeping me here, Victoria. That garden was the only reason I tolerated your presence in my house. It was the only reason I tried to be patient. I stayed for her." I looked at Isaiah, who had finally turned around. He looked sick. He looked at the mud, and I saw a tear slide down his cheek. Crocodile tears. Useless water. "You wanted to play by jungle law," I said to both of them. "You wanted to show me that the strong take what they want and the weak suffer. You wanted to show me that there are no rules, only leverage." I nodded slowly. "Fine. Message received. But you forgot one thing about the jungle." I stepped closer to Isaiah. "You are not the lion, son. You are the scavenger waiting for the scraps. And you," I looked at Victoria. "You are just a tourist who wandered off the path." I turned and walked toward the back door. "Where are you going?" Victoria called out, her voice shrill with rising panic. I stopped at the threshold. "I am leaving," I said. "Leaving?" Isaiah asked, taking a step forward. "What do you mean leaving?" "I mean I am done," I said. "You want the house. It is yours. You want the space. Take it. Enjoy the silence. Enjoy the mud." I walked into the house. I went to my room. I pulled my old leather suitcase from the closet, the one I used when I traveled to inspect properties in other states. I packed my clothes, I packed my toiletries, I packed the photo of Althea from my desk. I packed my important papers. It took me 15 minutes. When I walked out into the living room, they were standing there. They looked confused. They looked like children who had broken a vase and did not know if they were in trouble or not. "You cannot just leave," Victoria said. "Where will you go?" "That is none of your business," I said. I walked to the front door. I opened it. The air outside was fresh clean. It did not smell of diesel anymore. "Dad," Isaiah said, his voice trembling. "Dad, wait. We can replant it. We can fix it." I looked at him one last time. I looked at the man who had let his wife bulldoze his mother. "You cannot fix what is dead, Isaiah," I said. I walked out the door. I threw my keys on the porch swing. "You wanted to be the king of the castle," I said without looking back. "Long live the king." I got into my truck. I started the engine. I backed out of the driveway, leaving them standing in the doorway of a house they did not own, watching the only man who could save them drive away. They thought they had won. They thought they had driven the old man out. They thought they were finally free. They had no idea that by destroying that garden they had severed the last thread of my mercy. They had no idea that I wasn't retreating. I was repositioning. I drove down the street, my eyes dry, my hands steady on the wheel. "Okay, Althea," I whispered to the empty cab. "You tried it your way. You tried love, you tried patience. Now," I said, shifting gears, "now we try it my way." I drove toward the city, toward the headquarters of R&A Investments. The war was over. The occupation was over. Now the siege began, and I was going to starve them out until they were begging for the taste of dirt. I watched them through the lens of the security cameras I had installed years ago, cameras they were too arrogant to notice and too stupid to disable. They wasted no time. I was not even out of the county before the corks started popping. They did not mourn the loss of a father or the destruction of a family legacy. They celebrated it. For 2 days, my house became a nightclub. Victoria invited people I had never seen before, friends with hollow eyes and loud laughs who parked their cars on my lawn and treated my home like a fraternity house. They drank the wine from my cellar. They ate the food from my pantry. They danced on the hardwood floors I had laid with my own hands, scratching the finish with their heels. I sat in my temporary office at the R&A headquarters, staring at the monitors, my face stone cold. I listened to their conversations. "He is gone," Victoria shrieked, holding a glass of champagne, her other hand draped possessively over Isaiah's shoulder. The old man finally cracked. He took his ugly suitcase and left. "We won." Isaiah laughed, but it was a nervous sound. "Do you think he went to a hotel?" he asked. "Who cares?" Victoria replied, spinning in a circle. "He is probably at a homeless shelter or some cheap motel. He does not have any money. Remember, we cut off his access to the house. He is powerless. Now we just have to wait. Once he is declared incompetent or, passes on, R&A Investments will be ours. We just need to find the corporate paperwork in his study." They were so confident. They thought they had seized the castle. They thought the war was over and they were the victors divvying up the spoils. They ordered sushi. They ordered pizza. They lived like royalty in a kingdom that was already crumbling beneath their feet. They slept until noon. They left wet towels on the mahogany furniture. They treated my sanctuary like a cheap rental. But the euphoria of a coup only lasts as long as the resources hold out, and I had timed my departure perfectly. On the morning of the third day, the reality of their situation began to set in. It started with a subtle shift in the atmosphere. The house, which had always been kept at a comfortable 70 degrees, began to warm up. The humidity of the summer day seeped through the walls. I watched on the camera as Victoria woke up around 11. She walked into the kitchen wearing a silk robe looking for coffee. She pressed the button on the expensive espresso machine she had bought with my money. Nothing happened. No lights. No whirring of the grinder. She frowned and pressed it again. Then she checked the microwave clock. It was blank. She flipped the light switch. Nothing. "Isaiah!" she screamed, her voice shrill enough to shatter glass. "The power is out." Isaiah stumbled into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. "Check the breaker box," he mumbled. "Probably just tripped a fuse." It was not a fuse. I had called the power company personally at 8 that morning. As the owner of the property and the account holder, I had requested an immediate disconnection of service due to unauthorized occupants. Victoria marched to the refrigerator to get a bottle of water. She twisted the cap and took a sip, then went to the sink to rinse the glass. She turned the handle. A hollow gurgling sound echoed from the pipes. Then silence. Not a drop of water came out. She turned the handle back and forth frantically. "What is going on?" she yelled. "There is no water. Isaiah, do something." Isaiah tried the faucet, he tried the light switch, he looked out the window. The neighbor's porch light was on, the street lights were working. It was just my house, just my fortress sitting dead and silent in the middle of a powered neighborhood. Go check the meter, Victoria commanded. Isaiah went outside. I switched camera views to the exterior feed. A utility truck was just pulling away from the curb. A man in a blue uniform was locking the gate to the side yard. "Hey," Isaiah shouted, running down the driveway in his boxers and t-shirt. "Hey, what are you doing? Why did you cut our power?" The utility worker stopped. He looked at Isaiah with a bored expression. He held a clipboard in his hand. "Work order," he said simply. "Disconnect request." "Disconnect," Isaiah asked, his voice rising in panic. "We did not request a disconnect. We live here. Turn it back on." "Not according to my paperwork," the worker said. "Account holder requested a shutoff, said the property is vacant and under renovation." Victoria came running out, her silk robe flapping in the wind. "This is ridiculous," she screamed. "My husband owns this house. We are the owners. Turn it back on right now, or I will sue you and your entire company." The worker looked at his clipboard, then at Victoria. He actually laughed. "Lady," he said, "the owner of this property is a corporate entity, R&A Investments. The request came from the CEO personally." Victoria froze. Her face went pale. "R&A," she whispered. "Yeah," the worker said, getting into his truck. "If you have a problem, take it up with them. I am just doing my job. Have a nice day." He drove off, leaving them standing in the driveway. The sun was beating down. The house behind them was already starting to bake. Without air conditioning, it would be an oven by afternoon. Without water, the toilets would not flush. Victoria turned on Isaiah. "You said he left," she hissed. "You said he was gone." "He is gone," Isaiah stammered. "He drove away." "He is not gone, you idiot," she screamed, pushing him. "He is watching us. He is doing this to us. He cut the power. He cut the water. How are we supposed to live here?" Isaiah looked at the house. It did not look like a castle anymore. It looked like a trap. We can go to a hotel," he suggested, "just until we figure this out." "With what money?" Victoria snapped. "Your cards are canceled. My cards are maxed out. We have nothing, Isaiah. We spent the last of the cash on the sushi last night." Isaiah rubbed his face. His hands were shaking. "I need cash," he said. "I need—" "Okay, look, I will go to your shop." Victoria looked at him. "My shop." "Yes," Isaiah said, desperate for a solution. "The boutique. You have a petty cash box, right? You have sales from this week. I will go get the cash. We can get a room. We can buy food. It will buy us a few days." Victoria chewed her lip. She looked nervous. I have not been to the shop in a few days," she admitted. "Sales have been slow." "There has to be something there," Isaiah said. "Even a few $100s. I will go. You stay here. Pack a bag. I will be back in an hour." He did not have a car, so he had to call a rideshare. I watched him tap on his phone, praying the app was linked to a card that still had a few dollars of credit left. It seemed he got lucky, or perhaps he used a promo code, because 10 minutes later a beat-up sedan picked him up. I switched my attention from the house cameras to the security feed at the commercial plaza on Main Street. Victoria's boutique V&V Fashion was located in a prime spot. Corner unit, floor-to-ceiling glass windows. It was a vanity project I had funded indirectly through Isaiah's allowance. She sold overpriced clothes to women who wanted to look rich but had no taste. I watched Isaiah get out of the rideshare. He walked briskly toward the shop, his head down. He looked like a man on a mission. He looked like a man who thought he still had one lifeline left. He reached the front door. He pulled his keys from his pocket. He tried to insert the key into the lock. It would not go in. He jiggled it. He tried again. Then he stepped back and looked at the door. That was when he saw it. Plastered right across the glass at eye level was a bright orange sticker. It was large, ugly, and impossible to miss. Notice of eviction and seizure of assets. I zoomed in with the camera. I wanted to see the realization hit his face. Isaiah read the notice. His lips moved silently, forming the words. "This property has been reclaimed by the landlord due to non-payment of rent for a period of 6 months. All contents within have been seized as collateral against the outstanding debt." 6 months. Victoria had not paid rent in half a year. She had been taking the money I sent, taking the profits, if there were any, and spending it on herself. She had let the business rot while pretending to be a mogul. But that was not the part that made Isaiah's knees buckle. It was the line at the bottom. Property owner and landlord R&A Investments. Isaiah stared at the name. He touched the glass as if checking to see if it was real. He stepped back. He looked up at the building, then he looked down the street at the other shops. The coffee shop, the dry cleaner, the office complex across the street. I could see the gears turning in his head, the slow, horrifying realization. R&A Investments was not just the house. It was not just a shell company for tax purposes. It was the landlord. It was the owner. It was everything. He realized in that moment, standing on the hot pavement, that his father was not a retired construction worker. His father was the invisible hand that held his entire world together, and that hand had just closed into a fist. He pulled out his phone. He dialed Victoria. I switched the audio feed to listen. "Did you get the money?" Victoria answered immediately. "I am sweating to death here, Isaiah. It is 80 degrees in the bedroom." "There is no money, Victoria." Isaiah said, his voice hollow. "What do you mean there is no money?" "Go to the safe. The shop is gone, Victoria," he said. "It is locked. Seized." "What?" she shrieked. "That is impossible. It is seized for back rent," he said. 6 months, Victoria. "You have not paid rent in 6 months. I was handling it," she yelled. "I was negotiating. Who seized it? Who is the landlord? I will sue them." Isaiah laughed. It was a sound devoid of humor, a sound of pure despair. "You cannot sue the landlord, Victoria," he said. "Why not?" she demanded. "Because the landlord is R&A Investments," he whispered. There was silence on the line. Long, heavy silence. "What did you say?" she asked, her voice barely a squeak. "R&A Investments," Isaiah repeated. My father owns the building, Victoria. He owns the shop. He owns the house. He owns the car. He owns everything." He looked around the plaza. He looked like a man who had just woken up in a foreign country where he did not speak the language. "We are not fighting a helpless old man," he said into the phone, tears streaming down his face. "We are fighting the bank, and the bank just foreclosed on our lives." "Come pick me up," Victoria said. "Just come back. We need to think." "I cannot come back," Isaiah said. "I used the last credit on the rideshare app to get here. I have no money. I have no way home." "You have to walk," she said. "Just get here. We have to do something." Isaiah hung up the phone. He slumped against the glass door of the seized shop. He slid down until he was sitting on the pavement, his head in his hands. He was sitting in front of a store full of clothes he could not touch in a building owned by the father he had betrayed, broke, stranded, and alone. I watched him for a minute longer. I felt a twinge of pain deep in my chest, the echo of the love I used to have for the boy he once was. But then I remembered the rose garden. I remembered the mud. I remembered him turning his back on me. I reached for the intercom button on my desk console. "Security," I said. "Yes, Mr. King," the head of security answered. "There is a vagrant loitering in front of Unit 4B at the Main Street Plaza," I said, my voice steady. "He is blocking the entrance. Please have a patrol unit remove him." "Understood, sir. Sending a unit now." I leaned back in my chair. I watched on the screen as a security guard approached Isaiah. I watched my son stand up, arguing weakly, pointing at the shop. I watched the guard shake his head and point toward the street. Isaiah turned and began to walk. It was a long walk back to the house. 5 miles in the summer heat. He had a lot of time to think. He had a lot of time to wonder how it had all gone so wrong. But the lesson was not over. They had lost the utilities. They had lost the shop. They had lost the car. Now it was time to take the roof. I picked up the phone and dialed Patrice. "The shop is secured," I said. "Isaiah knows. Now send the eviction notice for the house. 24 hours. "You are not giving them much time, Reggie," she said. "I gave them 32 years, I said. They ran out of time yesterday." I hung up. I turned off the monitors. I did not need to watch anymore. I knew exactly what was going to happen. They were going to panic. They were going to scream. And then they were going to come looking for me. And when they found me, I would be ready. Not as their father, not as their victim, but as the CEO of the company that owned their existence. And I was about to fire them both. Isaiah stumbled through the front door of the sweltering house looking like a man who had walked through a desert without water. His suit was stained with sweat, and his expensive Italian leather shoes were scuffed from the 5-mile walk along the highway shoulder. Victoria was waiting for him in the living room, sitting in her underwear, in front of an open window, fanning herself with a fashion magazine. Her hair was frizzy from the humidity, and her makeup was running down her face in streaks of black mascara. She did not look at him with concern or love. She looked at him with the feral intensity of a trapped animal looking for a way out. "Did you get the money?" she demanded, not even rising from the chair. "I am dying in here, Isaiah. The toilet will not flush. The fridge is warm. The sushi from last night is rotting on the counter and it smells like death. We need to go to a hotel right now." Isaiah did not answer immediately. He walked to the kitchen island and leaned heavily against it, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He looked around the kitchen, the room I had renovated with my own hands 3 years ago. He looked at the high-end appliances that were now useless metal boxes. He looked at the ceiling where the recessed lighting was dark. "We are not going to a Hotel Victoria," he croaked, his throat dry and scratchy. "We are not going anywhere." "What do you mean we are not going anywhere?" she snapped, standing up and throwing the magazine onto the floor. "I told you to get the cash from the shop. Did you lose it? Did you spend it?" "There is no shop," Isaiah said, his voice devoid of emotion. "It is gone." Victoria froze. "What do you mean, gone? A building does not just disappear. It is seized," he said, looking her in the eye. "Evicted, locked up. There is a notice on the door. R&A Investments took it back for non-payment of rent." "So what?" she screamed. "So we call a lawyer, we sue them, we get an injunction. You said you were going to fix this. I cannot fix it," he shouted back. The first spark of real anger I had seen in him in years. "I cannot fix it because we are not fighting a stranger. We are fighting my father." Victoria blinked. "Your father? What does Reggie have to do with the shop?" "R&A Investments," Isaiah said, letting the name hang in the humid air. "Reggie and Althea. Dad owns the building, Victoria. He owns the plaza. He owns the company that leased you the space. He has been your landlord for 3 years and you never even knew it." Victoria shook her head, a slow denial of reality. "That is impossible. He is a retired contractor. He fixes toilets. He does not own commercial real estate." "You are lying. You are just trying to cover up your failure." Isaiah laughed, a dry, broken sound. "Check the car paperwork," he said, pointing toward the study where we kept the files. "Go look at the lease agreement for this house. Go look at the loan documents for the convertible. Look at the bottom line. Look at the signature of the guarantor." Victoria stared at him for a second, then turned and ran into the study. I heard drawers being ripped open. I heard papers being shuffled frantically. Isaiah did not move. He just stood in the kitchen staring at the dead refrigerator. A moment later, Victoria came back. She was holding a stack of documents, her hands trembling so hard the papers rattled. She held up the title to the silver convertible. "R&A Investments," she whispered. She held up the lease addendum for the house. "R&A Investments." She held up the business loan agreement for her boutique. "R&A Investments. He owns it all." She breathed, her voice barely audible. "Every single thing we have. He owns the car. He owns the business. He owns the roof." Isaiah nodded slowly. "He owns us, Victoria. We have been living in a cage he built, and we just spent the last week poking him with a stick." "But why?" she asked, her voice rising to a shriek. "Why did he hide it? Why did he let us think he was poor?" "Because he wanted to see who we really were," Isaiah said. "And we showed him. We showed him exactly who we are. We treated him like garbage in a house he owns. We tried to steal a house he already possessed. We tried to bulldoze the garden of the woman the company is named after." He looked at his wife with a new clarity. "We are not the victims here, Victoria. We are the villains. And the hero just decided to stop saving us." Before Victoria could respond, a sound cut through the heavy air. It was the sound of tires on gravel. Not one car, but 3. I watched from my office monitor as a convoy of black SUVs pulled into the driveway. They were sleek, professional, and menacing. They blocked the exit. They blocked the silver convertible. Men in dark suits stepped out. They were not police officers. They were private process servers, legal couriers, and asset recovery agents. They moved with the efficiency of a military unit. One of them carried a briefcase. Another carried a lockout kit. The third walked directly to the silver convertible. Victoria ran to the window. "Who is that?" she screamed. "Who are those men?" Isaiah walked to the front door. He opened it just as the lead agent raised his hand to knock. The heat from outside rushed in, mixing with the stale air of the house. "Isaiah King," the agent asked. He did not smile. He did not offer a hand. He held out a thick envelope. "Yes," Isaiah said. "You have been served," the agent said, thrusting the envelope into Isaiah's chest. Isaiah took it. He did not open it. He knew what was inside. "This is a formal notice of default and immediate repossession of the vehicle license plate King 1, the agent stated in a monotone voice. "The vehicle is property of R&A Investments. You are in violation of the lease terms regarding unauthorized drivers and failure to maintain insurance. Surrender the keys immediately." "No," Victoria screamed, running onto the porch. "You cannot take my car. My purse is in there. My sunglasses are in there." The agent looked at her. "You may retrieve your personal effects, ma'am. You have 2 minutes." He signaled to the man with the lockout kit. The man approached the convertible. He did not wait for keys. He used a slim gym tool and popped the lock in 5 seconds. The alarm blared for a moment before he silenced it. Victoria ran to the car, grabbing her designer bag, grabbing a handful of receipts, grabbing a lipstick that had melted in the heat. She clutched them to her chest, tears streaming down her face. The recovery agent got into the driver's seat. He started the engine I had paid for, the engine that had driven them away from my love and toward their own destruction. He backed the car out of the driveway. He did not look back. The lead agent handed Isaiah another envelope. "This is a cease and desist order regarding the commercial property at 45 Main Street," he said. "You are hereby notified that the lease is terminated effective immediately due to breach of contract and non-payment. Any attempt to enter the premises will be considered criminal trespassing." Isaiah took the second envelope. His hands were full of legal judgments. And finally the agent said, pulling a third envelope from his briefcase, the one with the red seal. "This is a notice to quit," he said. "You are hereby notified that your tenancy at will in this residence has been terminated by the owner. You have been deemed unauthorized occupants. You have 24 hours to vacate the premises." 24 hours, Isaiah whispered. "Tomorrow at noon," the agent confirmed. "If you are not gone, the sheriff will be called to forcibly remove you and your belongings will be placed on the curb. Have a nice day." The agents turned and walked back to their SUVs. They got in and drove away, leaving only dust and silence in their wake. Isaiah stood on the porch holding the papers that legally dismantled his entire life. He looked at the empty spot in the driveway where the convertible used to be. He looked at the overgrown grass. He looked at the sky. He turned and walked back into the house. He dropped the envelopes on the coffee table. They landed with a heavy thud. 24 hours, he said to the room. "We have 24 hours to get out." Victoria stared at the envelopes. She stared at the red seal. Then she screamed. It was a primal sound, a sound of pure, unadulterated rage. She grabbed a vase from the mantel, a porcelain vase that had belonged to Althea, and threw it at the wall. It shattered into 1,000 pieces. "I hate him!" she screamed, grabbing a lamp and hurling it to the floor. "I hate him! I hate him! He ruined everything! He is a monster!" She ran around the room, sweeping books off shelves, overturning chairs, kicking the coffee table. She was a tornado of destruction, destroying the things she could not own, breaking the objects she could not steal. "He cannot do this to me," she shrieked, her face red and distorted. "I am Victoria. I am special. I deserve this house. I deserve that money. It is mine. It is mine." Isaiah did not stop her. He did not try to calm her down. He sank onto the floor, his back against the wall, and pulled his knees to his chest. He watched his wife destroy his childhood home. He watched the woman he had chosen over his father reveal her true self. There was no grace in her grief. There was no dignity in her defeat. There was only greed screaming in the face of consequences. He looked at the shattered vase on the floor. He remembered buying that for his mother with his allowance money when he was 10 years old. He remembered how carefully she had dusted it. He looked at the empty spot where the television used to be before the power went out. He looked at the ceiling where he knew I had been watching. "Dad," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Dad, I did not know." But it was too late for not knowing. Ignorance was a luxury he could no longer afford. He realized then that he was not the victim of a cruel father. He was the victim of his own blindness. He had walked past the evidence every day. The way I inspected buildings, the way I talked to bankers, the respect people in town showed me. He had chosen to see a laborer because it made him feel superior. He had chosen to see a simple man because it made his own mediocrity feel like success, and now the simple man had simply turned off the lights and closed the bank. Victoria collapsed on the rug, sobbing and pounding her fists against the floor. "It is not fair," she wailed like a toddler. "It is not fair." Isaiah rested his head against the wall and closed his eyes. "No, Victoria," he said softly. "It is not fair. It is just." And that was the hardest thing of all to accept. He stood up slowly. His legs felt heavy. "We have to pack," he said. "I am not packing," Victoria screamed, sitting up. "I am not leaving. I will chain myself to the radiator. I will call the news. I will tell everyone what he did. Tell them," Isaiah said, walking toward the stairs. "Tell them my father evicted us because we tried to sell his house and destroy his wife's garden. Tell them we lived off him for years and never said thank you. Tell them the truth, Victoria. See who listens." He walked up the stairs, leaving her screaming in the wreckage of the living room. He went to the guest room. He pulled out the suitcases, the 10 massive suitcases they had arrived with. They looked different now. They did not look like the luggage of conquerors. They looked like the baggage of refugees. He started throwing his clothes inside. He did not fold them. He did not care about wrinkles. He just wanted to be gone. He wanted to be away from the heat, away from the shame, away from the house that was no longer a home but a monument to his failure. He paused when he found a photo tucked in the back of a drawer. It was an old Polaroid, him and me on a job site when he was 5. I was wearing my tool belt, holding him up so he could hammer a nail. We were both smiling. He touched the photo. He touched my face in the picture. "I am sorry, Dad," he whispered. He put the photo in his pocket. It was the only thing of value he had left. The clock was ticking. 23 hours remained, and the king was waiting to reclaim his castle. I sat in the leather executive chair of my corner office on the 45th floor of the King Tower, looking out at the city skyline through floor-to-ceiling glass. From this height, the people on the street looked like ants scurrying about their business, unaware of the giants walking among them. I checked my watch. It was 2 in the afternoon, precisely the time I knew they would arrive. I had tracked their movements through the GPS on Isaiah's phone, which was still part of the family plan I paid for. They had taken a taxi to the city center using the last of the cash Isaiah had scraped together. They were coming here not to apologize and not to beg, but to demand answers. They were coming to find the man they believed was ruining their lives. They were coming to find the owner of R&A Investments. In their minds, R&A Investments was likely run by some old business partner of mine, perhaps a white man from the old days, who had taken pity on me and let me keep my name on the deed of the house out of charity. Victoria had convinced herself that this mysterious partner had gone rogue, that he was overstepping his bounds by evicting them. She believed that if she could just get in front of him, she could charm or bully him into submission. She believed she could explain that I was mentally incompetent and that she and Isaiah were the rightful stewards of the estate. I watched the security feed on my desk monitor. A yellow taxi pulled up to the curb 20 stories below. 2 figures stepped out. Even from this distance, they looked defeated. Isaiah's suit was wrinkled and stained with sweat from his earlier walk. Victoria was wearing a dress that was meant for a garden party, not a corporate takedown, and her hair was fighting a losing battle against the humidity. They looked like tourists who had lost their passports. They walked toward the revolving doors of the building. I pressed the intercom button on my desk. "Send them up," I said to the head of security in the lobby. "Do not stop them. Let them come all the way to the penthouse." "Yes, Mr. Chairman," the voice replied, crackling with professional obedience. I leaned back and lit a cigar. It was a cohiba, a gift from a tenant who owned a chain of luxury tobacco shops. I rarely smoked, but today felt like an occasion. Today was the day the curtain fell. Today was the day the wizard stepped out from behind the curtain and showed them that the magic was real and it was dangerous. Patrice Hill sat on the sofa across the room reviewing a file. She looked up and smelled the smoke. "Are you sure about this, Reggie?" she asked. "It is going to be brutal." "It has to be, Patrice," I said, watching the smoke curl toward the ceiling ventilation system. "They need to see it. They need to see the empire they tried to steal. They need to understand the magnitude of their mistake." Down in the lobby, Isaiah and Victoria were approaching the front desk. I switched the camera view so I could see their faces clearly. The lobby of the King Tower was intimidating by design. Floors of Italian marble walls of polished granite and a ceiling that soared 3 stories high. It smelled of money and power. It was designed to make visitors feel small. Victoria walked up to the receptionist, a young woman named Sarah, who was sharper than she looked. "We are here to see the owner," Victoria announced, slamming her hand on the marble counter. "The owner of R&A Investments. Tell him Isaiah King and his wife are here." Sarah did not flinch. She looked at her computer screen, then up at them with a polite, distant smile. "You must be the party for the chairman," she said. "He is expecting you. Please take the private elevator to the penthouse suite." The chairman, Victoria, whispered to Isaiah as they walked toward the elevator banks. "See, I told you. It is some old corporate guy, probably some partner your dad worked for. He probably does not even know what his legal team is doing to us. Once I explain the situation, he will fire everyone involved." Isaiah did not look so sure. He was looking around the lobby, looking at the name of the building etched into the glass wall. The King Tower. I could see the confusion in his eyes. He had lived in this city his whole life. He had driven past this building 1,000 times, but he had never made the connection. He had never stopped to think that maybe, just maybe, the name on the building was his name too. They stepped into the elevator. It was a glass capsule that rose up the side of the building, offering a panoramic view of the city. As they ascended, I saw Victoria checking her reflection in the glass. She smoothed her hair. She fixed her lipstick. She put on her armor. She was preparing to manipulate, to lie, to charm. She was preparing to do what she did best. Isaiah stood in the corner of the elevator, looking pale. He was sweating profusely. He knew deep down that something was wrong. He knew that the world he thought he understood was unraveling. The elevator chimed as it reached the 45th floor. The doors slid open, revealing the reception area of my private office suite. It was quiet. The carpet was thick enough to swallow the sound of their footsteps. The walls were lined with artwork from black artists I had supported over the years. Sculptures, paintings, photographs of the city as it was being built. My executive assistant, a formidable woman named Mrs. Davis, stood up from her desk. "Go right in," she said, gesturing toward the double mahogany doors at the end of the hall. "He is waiting for you." Victoria led the way. She walked with a strut that was almost comical given her disheveled appearance. She pushed open the heavy doors and marched into my office. The room was vast. Floor-to-ceiling windows on 2 sides offered a view that cost millions. In the center of the room was a massive desk made of reclaimed timber from one of my first demolition jobs. I was sitting in my chair, my back to the door, looking out at the city. I held the cigar in one hand and a glass of aged bourbon in the other. "Mr. Chairman," Victoria called out, her voice echoing in the large space. "We need to talk. There has been a terrible mistake. Your legal team is harassing us. They have illegally evicted us from our home and seized my business. My father-in-law, Reginald King, is a confused, elderly man who does not understand what is happening. We are his legal guardians." I took a long drag from the cigar. I let the silence hang in the air for a moment. "Is that so?" I said, my voice deep and calm, not turning around. "You are his guardians." "Yes," Victoria said, stepping closer. "He is senile. He is not capable of managing his affairs. We are simply trying to protect his assets. But your company is treating us like criminals. We demand that you reinstate our access to the accounts and return our property immediately, or we will sue you for everything you have." I swiveled the chair slowly. The mechanism was silent. I turned until I was facing them directly. I was wearing a navy blue bespoke suit cut from Italian wool, a silk tie, gold cufflinks that Althea had given me for our 30th anniversary. I looked nothing like the man in the flannel shirt who pruned the roses. I looked like exactly what I was, a titan of industry. I rested my elbows on the desk and looked Victoria in the eye. "Hello, Victoria," I said. Victoria froze. Her mouth fell open. Her eyes darted around the room, looking for the real chairman, looking for the white man she had imagined. She looked at Patrice sitting calmly on the sofa. Then she looked back at me. Her brain could not process the image. It rejected the reality before her. "Dad," Isaiah whispered. His knees actually buckled and he had to grab the back of a guest chair to stay upright. Victoria blinked rapidly. She laughed a nervous, hysterical sound. "What are you doing here, Reggie?" she asked, her voice high and tight. "Where is the chairman? Did you follow us here?" I took another puff of the cigar and blew the smoke toward the ceiling. "I am the chairman, Victoria," I said. She shook her head. No, you are not. You are a construction worker. You fix porches. You do not own this. You do not own a skyscraper." She looked around the office frantically. "Did you get a job here?" she asked, a look of sudden dawning horror crossing her face. "Is that it? Are you the night watchman? Are you the security guard? Did you break in here to trick us?" I sighed. It was pathetic, really. Her prejudice was so deep, so ingrained, that even standing in my office surrounded by my name, she could not see me as anything other than a servant. Patrice stood up. She walked over to the desk and placed a hand on my shoulder. "Mr. King is the founder and CEO of R&A Investments," she said, her voice sharp and professional. "He built this building, Victoria. He owns this building. He owns the company that owns your house. He owns the company that owned your shop. He is the chairman. And you are trespassing." Victoria stared at Patrice. Then she looked at me. She looked at the suit. She looked at the cigar. She looked at the way I sat in the chair, not with the posture of a man who takes orders, but with the posture of a man who gives them. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She staggered back. "You," she whispered, you have been playing us. I have been watching you," I corrected. "I have been watching you treat my son like a dog. I have been watching you treat me like a burden. I have been watching you spend my money while calling me worthless." I stood up. I walked around the desk. "You wanted to meet the owner," I said, walking toward them. "You wanted to speak to the man in charge. Well, here I am. I am the man who cut your credit cards. I am the man who seized your car. I am the man who evicted you from your shop. And I am the man who is kicking you out of my house." Isaiah looked at me, tears streaming down his face. "Dad, why? Why did you not tell me? Why did you let us struggle?" "Struggle?" I laughed, a harsh barking sound. "You call living in a 5-bedroom house rent-free struggling. You call driving a $60,000 car struggling. You have never struggled a day in your life, Isaiah. I made sure of that. And look what it made you. Weak, entitled, blind." I pointed at Victoria. "You let this woman convince you that your own father was nothing. You let her convince you to sell my home. You let her destroy your mother's garden. You did not struggle, son. You surrendered." Victoria's face twisted into a mask of pure hatred. "You lied," she screamed, pointing a shaking finger at me. "You lied by omission. This is fraud. You entrapped us. We will sue you. We are entitled to this money. We are family." I walked back to my desk. I pressed the intercom button again. "Security," I said. "Yes, Mr. Chairman. I have 2 intruders in my office," I said, my voice calm and cold. "They are causing a disturbance. Please remove them from the building immediately and ban them from the premises." "Understood, sir. We are on our way." I looked at them. "You are not family," I said. "You are a bad investment, and I am liquidating my assets." Victoria lunged. She actually lunged at me, her nails hooked into claws, screaming like a banshee, but she never reached me. The double doors burst open and 4 large security guards in dark suits flooded the room. 2 of them grabbed Victoria by the arms. She kicked and screamed, cursing me, cursing Isaiah, cursing the world. "Get off me," she shrieked. "Do you know who I am? I am Mrs. Isaiah King. I own this place." "Not anymore, Ma," one of the guards said, dragging her toward the door. Isaiah did not fight. He stood there paralyzed, staring at me. A guard took his arm gently. "Sir, you need to leave." Isaiah looked at me. "Dad, please." I did not know. "Get them out," I said, turning my chair back to the window. I heard the struggle as they were dragged into the hallway. I heard Victoria S. screams fading as the elevator doors closed. I sat there looking out at the city. The cigar had gone out. I put it down in the crystal ashtray. I felt old. I felt tired. But I also felt clean. The boil had been lanced. The infection had been cut out. I picked up the glass of bourbon and took a sip. It burned, going down a good, clean burn. Patrice sat back down on the sofa. "Well," she said. "That was dramatic. It was necessary," I said. "What now?" she asked. "Now," I said, watching a storm cloud gather over the harbor. "Now we let them sit in the rain. They had lost the castle. They had lost the kingdom. And now they were going to find out what it was like to be peasants in a world that did not care about their last name. The real education of Isaiah King was about to begin, and the tuition was going to be expensive. The fall from the penthouse to the pavement is a long drop, but the fall from arrogance to irrelevance is infinite. I learned later from the report Patrice handed me that Isaiah and Victoria did not go to a luxury hotel after security threw them out of my building. They could not. Their credit cards were dead plastic, and they had less than $40 in cash between them. They ended up at the Starlight Motel, a place on the edge of town where the neon sign flickered like a dying heartbeat, and the hourly rates attracted a clientele that preferred the dark. For 5 days, they lived in squalor. They went from 600 thread count sheets to polyester bedspreads that smelled of stale smoke and regret. They went from ordering sushi to sharing vending machine crackers. I imagined Victoria sitting on the edge of a stained mattress, afraid to take off her shoes, watching a cockroach scuttle across the linoleum floor. I imagined Isaiah staring at the water stains on the ceiling, listening to the sirens wailing outside, realizing that the silence of my house, the silence he had called boring, was actually the sound of peace. They were trapped in a hell of their own making. Without a car, they had to walk or take the bus, a mode of transport Victoria had once mocked as being for peasants. Without phones, their service having been cut the next morning, they were isolated. They could not call her rich friends, who I suspected were not actually her friends at all. They could not call for help. They were forced to sit in that small room and look at each other. And when you strip away the money, the clothes, and the pretension, there was nothing left between them but blame. I knew they would come back. Desperation has a way of bending even the stiffest pride. Hunger makes people walk miles. And they were hungry not just for food, but for the safety they had so foolishly set on fire. On the 6th day, I was standing in the backyard. The sun was shining and the air smelled of fresh-turned earth and potential. I had not wasted time mourning the destruction of the garden. Instead, I had hired the best landscape architecture firm in the state. R&A Investments owned the landscaping company too, another detail Isaiah had missed. The mud pit where the bulldozer had rampaged was gone. In its place, a team of 12 men was installing something magnificent. We were putting in mature rose bushes transplanted from a specialized nursery. Yellow roses, red roses, whites and pinks. They were already blooming their roots deep in the new rich soil. We were laying a stone pathway made of imported slate. We were installing a fountain in the center, a tiered marble structure that bubbled with the soothing sound of water. It was not just a restoration. It was an upgrade. It was a declaration that beauty could not be killed. It could only be replanted. I was supervising the placement of a Japanese maple tree when I saw them. They did not drive up in a silver convertible. They walked. They came limping down the long driveway looking like refugees from a war zone. Isaiah's suit, the one he had worn to my office, was unrecognizable. It was wrinkled, stained, and hung loosely on his frame. He had lost weight in just a week. His face was covered in stubble and his eyes were hollow, sunken pits of exhaustion. Victoria fared no better. Her designer dress was torn at the hem. Her hair, usually so perfectly coiffed, was pulled back in a messy knot. She wore cheap flip-flops she must have bought at a convenience store, her feet dirty from the road. They stopped at the edge of the property. They looked at the house. They looked at the freshly painted shutters, the manicured lawn, the gleaming windows. It must have looked like a mirage. It must have looked like heaven. Then they looked at the backyard. They saw the crew working. They saw the fountain. They saw the roses blooming brighter and bigger than before. Isaiah let out a sound that was half sob, half laugh. He looked at the paradise he had tried to pave over. He realized in that moment that he had not just lost a house. He had lost a kingdom. He had traded a sanctuary for a mirage, and now he was standing in the dust. I stood by the fountain holding a pair of pruning shears. I did not move toward them. I waited. They walked across the grass, moving slowly as if they were afraid the ground might open up and swallow them. When they got within 10 feet, they stopped. The landscaping crew paused their work, sensing the tension. I signaled them to keep working. I wanted witnesses. "Dad," Isaiah rasped. His voice was cracked dry. I looked at him. I did not see my son. I saw a stranger who had stolen my son's face. "You are trespassing," I said calmly. Isaiah dropped to his knees. He literally collapsed onto the new sod, his legs giving out under the weight of his shame. "Dad, please," he sobbed, putting his hands together like he was praying. "I am sorry. I am so sorry. I was stupid. I was blind. He crawled forward a few inches, his tears dripping onto the grass. It wasn't me, Dad, he pleaded, his voice rising in hysteria. It was her. It was Victoria. She made me do it. She told me you were holding us back. She told me we needed the money. She said you were senile. I didn't want to do it, Dad. I swear. She twisted my head. She manipulated me. I looked at him with cold detachment. A man who blames his wife for his own actions is not a man at all. You are 32 years old, Isaiah, I said. You signed the papers. You stood there while the bulldozer ran. You walked into my office. Do not blame her for your lack of spine. But she forced me, he cried, pointing a shaking finger at Victoria. She threatened to leave me. She said if I didn't get the money, she would find someone who could. I loved her, Dad. I just wanted to make her happy. Look at what she did to us. Look where she brought me. Victoria stood there, her face a mask of shock. She looked at her husband groveling in the dirt, throwing her under the bus to save his own skin. Her eyes narrowed. The desperation shifted into something else. Calculation. She stepped forward, pushing past Isaiah. She did not kneel. She smoothed her torn dress and tried to summon the dignity she had lost days ago. Reggie, she said, her voice trembling but soft, a tone I had never heard her use. Isaiah is right. We made mistakes, terrible mistakes. We were greedy and we were wrong. She looked at the fountain, then back at me. Her eyes filled with tears. Big, glistening performance. Ready tears. But you have to understand why she said, placing a hand gently over her stomach. We were desperate. Not for clothes, not for cars. We were desperate because we were scared. Scared of what I asked, my face impassive. Scared for the future, she whispered. She took a step closer, invading my space, her voice dropping to a hush, meant only for me. I did not want to tell you like this, Reggie. Not with all this anger between us. But you have to let us come back. You have to help us, not for me, and not even for Isaiah. She paused, letting the silence stretch for maximum impact. She rubbed her stomach again. I am pregnant, she said. Isaiah stopped crying. He looked up at her, his mouth open. You are what he asked. I am pregnant, Victoria repeated, looking straight at me. I found out the morning of the wedding. That is why I was so crazy. That is why I needed the security. I wanted to build a nest for your grandchild, Reggie. She let a single tear roll down her cheek. You are going to be a grandfather. A baby is coming. A king. Your blood. Would you really let your own grandchild be born in a homeless shelter? Would you really let the next generation of this family starve because of a mistake we made? She reached out a hand toward me. Please, Reggie, for the baby, let us come home. I looked at her stomach. I looked at her face. It was a masterful performance. The quivering lip, the protective hand over the womb, the appeal to legacy. She knew that family was my weakness. She knew that Althea had always wanted grandchildren. She knew that the promise of a baby was the one thing that might make an old man forgive the unforgivable. Isaiah scrambled to his feet. You are pregnant, he asked, a sudden hope lighting up his dull eyes. Victoria, is it true? Yes, she said, looking at him with sudden warmth. I wanted to surprise you. But then everything fell apart. Isaiah looked at me. Dad, did you hear that? A baby. You are going to be a granddad. We have to stay. You cannot kick out a baby. I looked at them both. I looked at the hope in Isaiah's face, a hope built on a lie so vicious it made my stomach turn. I looked at Victoria, the architect of this farce, waiting for me to crumble, waiting for me to open the gates. She thought she had played the ace of spades. She thought she had found the ultimate leverage. But she had forgotten one thing. I was a man who did his homework. I reached into the back pocket of my work pants. I pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was faxed to me this morning by the private investigator Patrice had hired, a man who specialized in medical records and background checks. I unfolded the paper, slowly smoothing it out against my leg. A baby, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Yes, Victoria breathed, a smile touching her lips. Your grandchild. That is a miracle, I said. It is, she agreed. A blessing. A miracle. I continued looking at the paper because according to the medical records from the Mount Sinai Fertility Clinic in New York City dated 3 years ago, that is physically impossible. Victoria's smile vanished. Her face went gray. What are you talking about?" she stammered. "I am talking about your tubal ligation, Victoria," I said, my voice hard as granite. "I am talking about the elective sterilization procedure you underwent on May 14, 2021. I have the Surgeon S report right here." I held the paper up. "Patient requested permanent birth control due to lifestyle preference. Procedure successful. No reversal requested." Isaiah stared at her. He looked like he had been shot. You are fixed," he whispered. Victoria backed away, shaking her head. "That is a lie. That is fake. He forged it." I stepped forward. I thrust the paper toward Isaiah. "Read it, son," I said. "Read the date. Read her signature at the bottom. She lied to you. She lied about the pregnancy. Just like she lied about her money. Just like she lied about loving you. She is not carrying a child. She is carrying nothing but more deceit." Isaiah took the paper. He read it. His hands shook so hard the paper tore slightly. "You lied," he screamed at her, his voice breaking into a high-pitched wail of betrayal. "You told me you wanted kids. You told me we were building a family. And now you lie about a baby to get money." Victoria's mask fell completely. The fragile mother-to-be vanished, replaced by the cornered rat. So what? She shrieked. It was a strategy. We needed a way back in. Who cares if it is true? We needed a roof. Isaiah dropped the paper. He looked at me. Then he looked at her. The realization was total. He had destroyed his life for a woman who was incapable of giving him the one thing he actually wanted. He had betrayed his father for a barren lie. I looked at Victoria. "You tried to weaponize a child that does not exist," I said. "You tried to use my dead wife's dream against me." I folded the paper back up. "That was your last card, Victoria. And you busted." I turned to the foreman of the landscaping crew who was standing nearby holding a shovel, his face grim. "Call the sheriff," I said. "No," Victoria screamed, lunging toward me. "You old devil, I will kill you." She ran at me, her fingers curled into claws. But she never reached me. Isaiah stepped in front of her. He did not hit her. He just blocked her path. He looked at her with eyes that were dead. "Don't," he said. "Just don't." "Get out of my way, you loser," she spat at him. "This is your fault. If you weren't such a weak, pathetic mama's boy, we would have that money by now." The sirens wailed in the distance. They were getting closer. I looked at the gate. The performance was over. The curtain was coming down, and this time there would be no encore. The paper in my hand felt heavy, not because of the weight of the ink, but because of the weight of the truth it carried. I watched Victoria's face. She was still trying to maintain the facade of the glowing, expectant mother. Her hand was resting protectively on a stomach that I knew contained nothing but her lunch. She looked at me with those wide, pleading eyes, expecting the news of a grandchild to melt my heart. She thought she had found the one weakness in my armor. She thought that the legacy of the King family was her golden ticket back into the penthouse. I looked at Patrice, who was standing quietly by the newly installed fountain. She gave me a small, almost imperceptible nod. It was time. "Victoria," I said, my voice calm and steady. "You said this baby is a miracle. You said it is a blessing for this family." "Yes," she breathed, a hopeful smile trembling on her lips. "It is Reggie. It is a new beginning for all of us." I took a step closer to Isaiah. I wanted him to see this. I wanted him to read every word. "It certainly is a miracle," I continued, raising the document so the sunlight hit the medical letterhead. "Because according to this report from the Mount Sinai Fertility Clinic in New York City dated 3 years ago, a conception would be medically impossible." Victoria's smile did not just fade, it evaporated. The color drained from her face so fast she looked like a corpse standing upright. Her eyes darted from the paper to my face, then to Isaiah, then back to the paper. I began to read aloud. "Patient name Victoria Bennett. Date of procedure May 14th, 2021. Procedure elective tubal ligation. Notes. Patient requested permanent sterilization. Procedure successful. No reversal requested." I lowered the paper. "You had your tubes tied 3 years ago, Victoria," I said. "You made sure you would never have children. And that is your choice. It is your body. But to stand here in my backyard on the dirt you desecrated and lie to my son about a child that does not exist to use my dead wife's dream of a grandchild as a bargaining chip for rent money that is evil. Isaiah snatched the paper from my hand. He read it, his eyes scanning the lines frantically. He read the date. He read the doctor's signature. He read the confirmation. His hands started to shake violently, the paper rattling in the humid air. "You are fixed," he whispered. The words came out like a strangled cry. "You told me you wanted a big family. You told me you were just waiting for the right time. You told me we were building a legacy." Victoria stepped back, her hands dropping from her stomach. Her posture changed instantly. The fragile mother act vanished, replaced by the cornered rat she truly was. It was a strategy, she hissed, her voice losing all its sweetness. "We needed a way back in, Isaiah. Your father cut us off. We were sleeping in a motel with cockroaches. I had to do something. Who cares if it is true? We needed leverage. Once we were back in the house, I would have faked a miscarriage in a few months. We would have had sympathy. We would have had time. It was a plan, Isaiah. A plan to save us." Isaiah looked at her with a horror so profound it looked like physical pain. "You were going to fake a death?" he asked, his voice rising. "You were going to let me mourn a child that never existed just so you could live in a mansion? It is survival, you idiot," she screamed at him. "Grow up. This is how the world works. You do what you have to do." She turned her rage toward me. Her eyes were black with hate. "You did this," she shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at my face. "You old devil. You spied on me. You dug through my medical history. That is illegal. That is a violation of my privacy. I will sue you. I will take every penny you have." "It is not illegal when it is part of a background check for a corporate security clearance," I said calmly, "which is standard procedure for anyone trying to claim assets from R&A investments." You walked into the trap, Victoria. The realization that she had lost everything finally hit her. The money was gone. The house was gone. The husband she had manipulated was looking at her like she was a monster. And the father-in-law she had underestimated was standing there holding the smoking gun. She snapped. "You dirty old man," she screamed, lunging toward me. "You are nothing but a filthy, lying old man. You ruined my life. You turned my husband against me. I hate you. I hope you die alone in this miserable house." She ran at me, her fingers curled into claws aiming for my eyes. She wanted to hurt me. She wanted to make me bleed to pay for her humiliation. But she never reached me. Before her fingers could touch my face, sirens wailed from the driveway. 2 sheriff's deputies came running around the corner of the house, their hands on their holsters. I had called them the moment I saw Isaiah and Victoria walking down the road. I knew this would end in violence. I knew Victoria well enough to know that when she lost control, she sought destruction. "Police, drop it," one of the deputies shouted. Victoria froze. She looked at the deputies, then back at me. She was panting, her chest heaving. "Ma'am, step away from Mr. King," the deputy ordered. "She is trespassing," I said to the officer, pointing at her, "and she just attempted to assault me. You have it on the security cameras." Victoria looked up at the corner of the house where the new high-definition camera was blinking. She realized in that second that her entire meltdown, her confession about the fake pregnancy, her attempted assault had been recorded in 4K resolution. "No," she whimpered, backing away. "No, I was emotional. He provoked me. He stole my life." "You are under arrest for criminal trespassing and attempted assault," the deputy said, grabbing her wrist and spinning her around. He slapped the handcuffs on her. The sound of the metal ratcheting shut was the sweetest music I had heard in years. Isaiah did not move. He did not try to stop them. He did not beg them to let her go. He just stood there, holding the medical report, staring at the woman he had married. Victoria started to scream as they dragged her across the lawn. "Isaiah, help me," she wailed. "Do not let them take me. Tell them I live here. Tell them it is a misunderstanding." Isaiah looked at me. Then he looked at the deputies. "She does not live here," he said, his voice dead. "She is a stranger." Victoria's screams turned into a stream of profanity as they shoved her into the back of the patrol car. I watched as the car drove away, the lights flashing against the trees. Silence returned to the backyard. The fountain bubbled peacefully. The birds started singing again. It was just me and my son. Isaiah dropped the paper on the grass. He looked at the house. He looked at the garden. Then he looked at me. He looked like a man who had been stripped naked and left in a blizzard. "Dad," he said, his voice cracking. "I am so sorry. I did not know. I swear to God I did not know about the baby. I did not know about the stealing. She twisted everything. I looked at him. I saw the tears in his eyes. I saw the genuine pain. But I also saw the weakness that had allowed all of this to happen. You did not know because you did not want to know. Isaiah, I said, you liked the lifestyle she promised you. You liked the easy road. You closed your eyes to the truth because the lie was comfortable. Isaiah fell to his knees in the grass. He put his head in his hands and sobbed. It was a deep, guttural sound of total defeat. Dad, please, he begged, looking up at me, his face wet with tears and snot. I have nothing. I have no wife. I have no home. I have no money. I have no job. I am your son. I am your flesh and blood. You cannot let me starve. You cannot put me on the street. Please, Dad, just let me come home. I will sleep in the basement. I will do anything. I looked down at him. My heart ached. Every instinct as a father screamed at me to pick him up, to hold him, to tell him it would be okay, to write a check and fix it all. But I knew that would be the worst thing I could do. If I saved him now, he would never learn. If I picked him up, he would never know how to stand on his own. He would always be the boy waiting for a bailout, and I would not be around forever to catch him. I needed to break him to build him, just like I broke concrete to lay a new foundation. I walked over to the landscaping crew's tool truck. I reached into the bed and pulled out a heavy steel shovel. The wood handle was worn smooth from work. The blade was scarred and sharp. I walked back to Isaiah. He looked up at me, hope flickering in his eyes, thinking I was coming to embrace him. I threw the shovel at his feet. It landed with a heavy thud on the turf. Isaiah jumped back, startled. Dad, what is this? He asked. I am not giving you money, Isaiah, I said, my voice hard as iron. I am not giving you a room. I am not giving you a car. Those days are over. You lost the right to my charity when you let that woman try to bury me. Isaiah looked at the shovel, then at me, confusion clouding his face. Then what? What am I supposed to do? He stammered. You said you would do anything I said. So here's the deal. I pointed to the far corner of the yard where the earth was still churned and messy from the bulldozer, where the roots of the old roses were still tangled in the mud. You want to eat? You work. You want a place to sleep? You earn it. I folded my arms. I am hiring a laborer, I said. Minimum wage, $15 an hour. No benefits, no advances. Your job is to dig. You are going to dig up every single dead root your wife left behind. You are going to turn this soil until it is soft enough to plant in. You are going to haul the rocks. You are going to spread the mulch. And you are going to do it with your own hands. Isaiah stared at the shovel. He looked at his soft, manicured hands, hands that had never held a tool in their life. Dad, I cannot dig ditches, he whispered. I am a marketing executive. You are an unemployed man with $0 to his name, I corrected him. You are nobody, Isaiah. Until you build yourself into somebody, you are nobody. I took a step closer. There is a cot in the gardening shed, I said, pointing to the small wooden structure at the edge of the property. It has a roof. It has a light bulb. That is your home. If you work, you get a meal from my kitchen. If you do not work, you starve. Those are the terms. Take the shovel or take a walk. Isaiah looked at the shed. It was tiny. It was hot. It was where I kept the lawnmower. He looked at the gate leading to the street. He could leave. He could walk away and try to find a friend who would take him in. But he knew he had no friends. He knew Victoria had isolated him from everyone. He looked back at the shovel. He reached out a trembling hand. He wrapped his fingers around the wooden handle. He stood up slowly, using the shovel as a crutch. He looked me in the eye. He did not see anger anymore. He saw a challenge. Where do I start? He asked, his voice quiet. I pointed to the deepest scar in the earth, the one right in the center where Althea's favorite bush used to be. Start there, I said. Dig deep, because you have a lot of dirt to move before you find your way back to me. He nodded. He walked over to the spot. He pushed the blade into the earth. He stepped on it with his expensive ruined shoe. He lifted the first scoop of dirt. I watched him take the first stroke. It was a small, pathetic scoop of dirt, but it was a start. I turned and walked back toward the patio. I did not offer him water. I did not offer him gloves. He needed blisters. He needed to feel the pain of the work. He was digging a hole in the ground, but for the first time in his life, I hoped he was building a man. I sat down on the patio chair and watched him. The king had reclaimed his castle, and the prince was finally learning what it cost to build the kingdom. The shovel lay on the grass between us like a dividing line drawn in steel and wood. It was a simple tool, an ancient tool, but in that moment it was the most important object in my son's life. It represented the only bridge back to humanity he had left. I watched him stare at it. I could see the war raging behind his eyes. On one side was his pride, the fragile ego of a man who thought he was too good to sweat. On the other side was survival. "I am not offering you a job, Isaiah," I said, my voice cutting through the humid afternoon air. "I am offering you a lifeline. You have spent the last 5 years thinking you were a king because I paid for the crown. But a king who cannot feed himself is just a beggar in a nice suit." I pointed to the shed at the edge of the property. It was a small structure weathered by years of rain and sun. It smelled of gasoline and cut grass. It was not comfortable. It was not air-conditioned. It was a far cry from the penthouse office where he had tried to humiliate me just hours before. "That is your castle now," I said. "There is a cot. There is a blanket. There is a jug of water. If you work, you eat. If you do not work, you leave. And if you leave, do not ever come back." Isaiah looked at the shed. He looked at his hands soft and unblemished by labor. He looked at his ruined Italian shoes. He looked at the gate where the police car had disappeared, taking his wife and his illusions with it. He could have walked away. He could have chosen the streets. He could have chosen to keep his pride and lose his soul. For a long, terrifying minute, I thought he might. I saw his muscles tense. I saw him look toward the road. But then he looked at me. He looked into his father's eyes, and for the first time in years, he did not see an ATM. He saw a man. He saw the man who had carried him on his shoulders, the man who had taught him to ride a bike, the man who had buried his mother. He let out a breath that sounded like a tire deflating. His shoulders slumped. The arrogance drained out of him, leaving only a frightened, exhausted boy. He bent down. His fingers closed around the rough wood of the shovel handle. He lifted it. It was heavy. It was real. "Where do I start?" he whispered. I pointed to the patch of earth where Victoria had ordered the destruction of the yellow roses. The soil was compacted, hard and ugly. "Right there," I said. "You dig until you hit the roots. You pull them out. You turn the soil. You make it ready for life again." Isaiah walked to the spot. He positioned the blade. He stepped on it. The ground was hard. The shovel barely made a dent. He grunted and jumped on it, driving it down with his weight. He lifted the first scoop of dirt and threw it aside. He took another scoop, and another. I walked back to the patio. I did not help him. I did not offer him words of encouragement. He did not need a cheerleader. He needed to sweat. I sat down in my chair and watched. The first hour was brutal. The sun was high and hot. Isaiah took off his suit jacket and threw it on the grass. Then he took off his tie. Sweat soaked through his dress shirt, turning the expensive fabric transparent. His movements were clumsy. He did not know how to use his leverage. He was using his back instead of his legs. By the second hour, he was groaning with every movement. Blisters were forming on his hands. I saw him stop and look at his palms. The skin was raw and peeling. He looked at me, expecting me to tell him to stop, expecting me to bring him a glass of lemonade like I did when he was 10. I stayed in my chair. I took a sip of my own water. I let him feel the burn. He kept digging. By the third hour, the sun began to dip, casting long shadows across the yard. The pile of dead roots and rocks was growing. Isaiah was moving slower now. He was stumbling. He fell once, landing on his knees in the dirt. He stayed there for a long time, his chest heaving, his head hanging low. I thought he was going to quit. I thought he was going to throw the shovel down and walk away. But then I saw his shoulders start to shake. It started as a tremor and grew into a convulsion. A sound escaped him, a sob, a raw, ugly sound of pure grief. He was crying. Not the fake, manipulative tears he had shed earlier. These were tears of exhaustion, tears of shame, tears of a man realizing he had wasted his life chasing a mirage. He cried for the wife who never loved him. He cried for the baby that never existed. He cried for the mother whose memory he had disrespected. And he cried for himself, for the hollowness inside him. He cried until he had nothing left. And then he stood up. He wiped his face with his dirty sleeve, leaving a smear of mud across his cheek. He picked up the shovel, and he kept digging. That was the moment I knew I hadn't lost him. That was the moment I knew there was still something in there worth saving. He worked until the sun went down. He worked until his hands were bleeding and his legs were trembling. He worked until he had cleared the entire section I had pointed out. When he finally stopped, it was twilight. He walked over to the patio, dragging the shovel behind him. He stood at the bottom of the steps. He did not come up. He knew he hadn't earned the right to stand on the same level as me yet. "I finished," he croaked. I looked at the work. It was messy. It was amateur. But the ground was turned. The roots were gone. "It is a start," I said. I stood up and went into the kitchen. I came back with a plate of food, leftover chicken rice and green beans, simple food, honest food. I also brought a bottle of water and a first aid kit. I set them on the edge of the patio. "Eat," I said. "Bandage your hands, then go to the shed. We start again at 6 in the morning." Isaiah looked at the food like it was a feast. "Thank you," he whispered. He did not ask for a bed in the house. He did not ask for money. He took the plate and walked to the shed. I watched him enter the small wooden structure. I watched the single yellow light bulb flicker on. I sat back down in my chair. The night air was cooling. The crickets were starting their song. I reached over and pressed play on the small speaker I kept on the table. The sound of John Coltrane filled the air, smooth and complex. Jazz, Althea's favorite. I closed my eyes and let the music wash over me. I felt a deep, profound peace settle in my bones. It was the peace of a man who had weathered the storm and was still standing. I had not lost my son. I was rebuilding him. It would take time. It would take months, maybe years of hard labor. He would have to learn the value of $1 by earning it 15 at a time. He would have to learn the value of a home by living in a shed. He would have to learn the value of family by losing everything else. But he was digging. He was trying. And as long as he was holding that shovel, there was hope. I looked up at the sky. The stars were coming out bright and clear above the city lights. I thought of Victoria sitting in a jail cell alone with her lies. I thought of the empty office in the tower. Then I thought of Althea. I could almost feel her hand on my shoulder, warm and reassuring. I did it. "Althea," I whispered to the night. I stopped enabling him. I stopped protecting him from the world. I let him fall so he could learn how to stand up. I took a sip of my tea. It was still warm. The garden would bloom again. It would be different. It would have scars, but the roots would be deeper. The foundation would be stronger. I looked at the light in the shed one last time. "Good night, son," I said softly. "Sleep well. You have a lot of work to do tomorrow." I turned off the music. I picked up my cup. I walked back into my house, my home, my castle. I locked the door. And for the first time in a long time, I slept without worrying about the wolves at the gate, because the wolves were gone. And the only thing left was the work of building a new day. What would you have done in my place? Would you have forgiven him sooner? Would you have let him stay in the house? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story of justice and redemption, please like and subscribe. There are many more stories to tell and many more lessons to learn. Until next time, remember that true wealth is not what you have in the bank. It is what you have in your heart. Stay strong, stay honest, and never let anyone take your dignity. The hardest truth I ever had to face wasn't found in a ledger or a contract. It was found in the eyes of the son I had crippled with kindness. For years, I believed that love meant shielding Isaiah from the harshness of the world. I was wrong. By removing every obstacle, I had stolen his ability to climb. True wealth isn't the money in the trust fund. It is the resilience in your spirit. Sometimes the most loving thing a parent can do isn't to give their child a handout, but to hand them a shovel and let them find their own strength in the dirt. If you believe that dignity must be earned and that justice is best served cold, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories of truth and redemption.